I simply pulled open the curtains. This caused widespread panic throughout China. Soon, the news spread globally. Countries worldwide went crazy over my action. All because I was in a rule-based horror world. Here, not following the rules means instant death. And the first rule of this world is, do not open the curtains. This is 2055. The entire Earth is shrouded in the rule-breaking tales. The rule world will randomly select challengers from various countries. Success will win huge rewards for the entire nation. Conversely, the rule's punishment will befall that country, bringing immeasurable disaster. And my country, Manhwa, has failed 5 times in a row, resulting in the deaths of a large number of citizens. This time, 18-year-old me was randomly selected. I was completely inexperienced. I wasn't expected to succeed at all. Uncle Dong Dao, who had been incredibly lucky several times in a row, was the first to send a mocking message. But they didn't know that. They were about to be proven wrong. It turns out that the first-time entrants into the world of ghost stories can each receive 1 chance to draw a talent. And I drew the one-of-a-kind 3S grade bizarre talent. Innate rebellious nature. In the world of strange tales, I ignore the rules of right and wrong. Direct rebellion. I won't be affected by any bizarre pollution. This is completely tailor-made for me. I'll develop secretly for now. But in terms of rebelliousness, that's a surefire win. Relaxing, I immediately stood up and observed my surroundings. This time, the ghost story world I entered is called Mom's Note. I need to judge the correctness of the information on the note myself, to pass the next few days' tests. Rule 1, whether it's night or day, don't open the curtains. Rule 2, there's frozen beef in the refrigerator, but it's best eaten raw. Absolutely do not cook it until it's fully done. Rule 3, absolutely do not turn on the lights in the bathroom. Rule 4, the clock on the wall will tell you the time, but absolutely do not use it as an alarm clock. Rule 5, absolutely do not open the door. Don't open it even if someone knocks. Rule 6, take good care of the house cat, but absolutely do not name it. Rule 7, feed the cat noodles. Absolutely do not feed it cat food. Rule 8, take the cat to bed with you at night. Absolutely do not leave it in the living room. Rule 9, when neighbors visit, open the door for it, and give it cat food. Rule number 10, never watch TV. Having just finished watching the rules, I quickly walked to the window. Immediately, I yanked open the curtains. I'm all about rebellion now. Seeing this scene, the citizens watching the live broadcast outside were also puzzled. Could Rule 1 be false? And more people in Longwo were excited by my actions. You judged the rule's correctness so quickly. It doesn't seem like your first time in a ghost story incident at all. Longwo is saved. Meanwhile, other countries quickly sent prompts to their chosen participants, telling them that the first rule was wrong. Upon hearing the news, the chosen participant from Dongdao, not wanting to lose to me, immediately opened the curtains, just as he was enjoying the sunshine. A wave of strange pollution suddenly attacked. Luckily, the talent he drew could withstand 3 cleansings. Otherwise, this guy's grave would be 10 feet high by now. But the chosen ones from the other small countries weren't so lucky. They were all eliminated. This caused the remaining contestants from other countries to become cautious. An hour passed. Nothing else happened. I was bored and even a little hungry. Then I got up and went to the refrigerator. Inside, there were 5 beef patties and a package of noodles. But the game time limit is 7 days. So, 5 beef patties clearly weren't enough. So, not wanting to go hungry, I reached for the noodles. And this action once again shocked everyone outside. Because Rule 7 is clearly written. The choo-choo noodles are for the cat. This cat is about to mutate. Just because I fed it cat food, not noodles. So it was today. I was unexpectedly chosen to represent Dragon Nation in the rule-breaking world. Only by correctly judging the rules on the note can I survive. But rule number 7 clearly states that I should feed the cat noodles. I absolutely must not give it cat food. Yet I ignored it. I grabbed the noodles and started cooking them. I even cracked an egg. But just then, an orange tabby cat, appearing from nowhere, had already been standing behind me, watching me. Then it jumped down from above, circling me and examining me. Its eyes were full of a humane glimmer. I picked it up. Seeing how cute it was, I couldn't help but give it a sexy name. From now on, you're ugly. The cat cried out in surprise and anger. The light in its eyes sharpened. Meanwhile, the outside world exploded because of that one sentence I said. Because I broke another rule. I named the cat, but I didn't care at all what happened to the cat. In the Rule of Weird Tales world, Mom's Note has a 99% mortality rate. If I just guessed blindly, I'm definitely dead. But I'm a natural rebel. I can only survive by constantly rebelling. That's how I receive continued protection from fate, to successfully complete this. So no matter how terrifying the scene before me is, I have to grit my teeth and push through. Thinking about this, I didn't hesitate anymore. I started to eat voraciously. After finishing, I even burped contentedly. I even started to admire myself. How could I cook such delicious food? After I was full, looking at the ugly creature beside me, eyes wide with longing, I directly poured the cat food into his bowl. And the cat was acting even stranger. But I didn't care at all. Casually washing dishes in the kitchen, I was taking my rebellion to the max. Seeing me repeatedly break so many rules, countries around the world were gloating. And the higher-ups in Longwo were frantic. What in the world is this Tae-won doing? The cat is a crucial part of this. Clearly, he can't be named and fed cat food. Now what? I've lost the cat's help. The next few days will be difficult to survive. I originally thought he would be the savior of Dragon Kingdom, but now it seems he's too young. A group of high-ranking officials from Dragon Kingdom hung their heads in dejection. They are all very disappointed in my performance. Then I would use a precious opportunity to remind myself to pay attention to the cat's changes. But at that moment, the big screen suddenly displayed the latest news synchronously. The chosen ones from 6 countries, including Vietnam and Myanmar, were mysteriously swallowed. The world of strange tales is about to arrive. Everyone who saw this news was shocked. They realized that other countries must have followed my example. As a result, the chosen ones from the great powers avoided being consumed using their talents. But all the smaller countries were infected. This inadvertently accelerated the progress of the ghost story world. And within the ghost story world at this time, it was nearing noon. The chosen ones from each country were staring blankly at the steaks, hesitating whether to eat the steak raw or cook it. But I'm different. He happily tossed the steak directly into the frying pan. Then he enjoyed a delicious meal. Afterwards, he contentedly nestled into the sofa, planning to take a nap. At this time, the ugliness in his eyes had completely lost its human light. His eyes were bloodshot, revealing a hint of eeriness. And witnessing this scene, the world's nations, I also immediately sent a prompt to their chosen ones, informing them that the second rule was wrong. But some chosen ones from small countries, wary of the lesson from the first rule, chose to eat it raw. As a result, they were instantly consumed by the strange phenomenon. I, now, have become a guiding beacon. This also infuriated the American chosen one, John. He, who drew an S-class talent, has been trailing behind me. Is he going to move back to the Martyr's Shrine in the next few days? And now, seeing the prompt from Dragon Nation, I realize that other countries are imitating my choices. I smiled faintly, thinking to myself, since you like to imitate, then let you imitate to your heart's content. I started by giving the cat a large sum of money, completely disregarding the rule that prompts companionship with a cat. I drew a rebellious talent. Only rebellious will can avoid contamination in the world of strange tales. Successfully cleared the level. My actions just now also caused a global audience outcry. I don't care about that. I directly picked up the ugly monster and locked it in the toilet. Not seeing the ugly monster instantly made me feel relieved. I casually found a comfortable position and lay on the sofa. I was bored, so I thought I'd play with the cat. So I turned on the TV. Then a little pink pig appeared on the screen. I watched it with great interest. But I didn't know that the outside world collectively exploded again at this sight. Because I'd broken another rule. What kind of crazy move was that? Watching pink naughty pig in the world of strange tales. This is a vacation, right? Meanwhile, in the high-level meeting room of the small island nation, a group of idiotic Japanese officials are jumping around like fools, guessing whether the rules are right or wrong. Why can Big Ivan be so carefree? What the hell is going on with Bieber John? Are they just going to let the Dragon Nation ride on their heads? Meanwhile, a chosen participant in the Strange Tales event board turned on the television. But instead of Peppa Pig, a huge, bizarre mass appeared. Then, before everyone's eyes, he was dragged into the television, completely disappearing. Then the system announced a prompt: due to the elimination rules for chosen participants in this country, the Strange Tale world descends. At this moment, the high-level officials of various countries were like they had been splashed with a bucket of cold water. They suddenly came to their senses. They all speculated that I had drawn a high-level talent. Because among the high-level talents, there is one that can grant immunity to 3 instances of strange erosion. But now I have already violated 3 rules in a row. This also caused the relaxed mood of the Dragon Kingdom's high-level officials to immediately rise again to the level of concern over the ghost story incident. That afternoon passed. The chosen ones from the small island country in the Kimchi country were furious, like scolded children. You want to imitate me but don't dare to take the risk. But right now, I don't have time to think that much. I hurried to the restroom. Noodles and steak. I ate a bit too much and have indigestion. But as soon as I entered the restroom, I found it pitch black. And in the shadows, there seemed to be a strange, dark shadow writhing. If I follow the instructions of Rule 3, you absolutely mustn't turn on the light when using the toilet. But for me, not turning on the light is impossible. Without a moment's hesitation, I flicked the switch. The toilet was instantly illuminated. It was very clean, nothing strange at all. Only that ugly thing scurried away from my feet. Just as I was about to comfortably relieve myself, I saw several scratches on the wall that looked like cat claws. And these scratches perfectly formed the character for death. I immediately pulled up my pants, and angrily ran to the living room to grab. Ugly monster. It was you who was scratching and drawing on the toilet wall, wasn't it? If you can't write, don't write. If I catch you causing destruction again, I'll stew you. Saying this, I gave him 2 more hard slaps. I saw a hint of defiance in his eyes. I threw him back into the toilet. I said loudly, "Behave yourself. No matter what you are, I have plenty of ways to deal with you. Tonight, you're not leaving until you clean those scratch marks off the wall. There's you tomorrow." This cat, Hao Guizhi, wouldn't sleep in the dead of night, but was making a creepy, cackling sound on the sofa. I gave it a good slap. It's because that kind of laughter comes from villains in novels and comics. And unsurprisingly, my action once again blew up the internet among onlookers in the outside world. They started discussing Xiao Dihua's show. I thought that seeing the word "dead" in the toilet would scare Big Ivan, but unexpectedly, he slapped the cat twice. The cat is so cute. Why hit the cat? Those 2 slaps must have hurt a lot. Meanwhile, the Japanese player, who had been holding it in all day without pants, could no longer hold it. It looked like he was about to soil his pants. He rushed into the toilet. He didn't even turn on the light. Meanwhile, the online viewers watching the live stream all thought this was a rather interesting live broadcast. But just as he sat on the toilet, ready for a massive bowel movement, countless strange things came flying at him from all directions. Everyone thought he was done for, but a golden aura instantly lit up around him. He blocked the attacks from all sides, but before he could breathe a sigh of relief, the strange attacks came again, and his immunity seemed to be a one-time thing. Soon, it showed signs of breaking down. Not wearing pants, he didn't care anymore. He really ran towards the bathroom door without his pants on. He quickly flipped the switch, and as the lights came on, the strange occurrences suddenly disappeared, as if they had never happened. And so, under the gaze of countless eyes, having lost an immunity opportunity by not wearing pants, he temporarily secured safety. Seeing him successfully escape the strange occurrences, the high-ranking officials of Japan couldn't help but cheer for him. But what they didn't know was that a survivor without pants wasn't exactly happy, because he only had 1 immunity chance left. But he was still lucky. At least he survived. Others weren't so fortunate. Several players from small countries who hadn't turned on their lights were directly consumed by the anomaly. And with the successive elimination of these small countries, now only 6 major countries and 3 minor countries remain. Meanwhile, another day passed in the bizarre world of the rules. 10 p.m. I took a shower. I went to bed early. Unlike the other chosen ones, I continued my rebellion. I violated 2 rules again. I simply took down the wall clock and set it as an alarm clock on my bedside table. And unlike the other contestants, I didn't sleep with the cat. Instead, I left the ugly thing in the living room to fend for itself. This means I chose the exact opposite approach from them. Nothing strange happened while the other chosen ones were sleeping late at night. But the ugly creature outside my room underwent an astonishing transformation. First, it shed its hair in clumps. Then its skin tore. A humanoid shadow actually crawled out of its body. No one could see its face clearly. We could only barely judge it to be a woman from its long hair and figure. And so, under the anxious gaze of countless eyes in the outside world, he searched the entire room. Finally, he stopped at my bedroom door. Then he just stood there eerily. This woman, instead of sleeping in the dead of night, stood motionless in front of my bedroom door for over 3 hours. All because I broke the rules. I wildly slapped the cat 200 times on its nose. She crawled out of the cat's belly in the middle of the night. I swear I'll avenge the cat. But seeing this scene, the onlookers from the outside world couldn't sit still anymore. Big sis, why are you like a big accident? It's been so long, why haven't you updated? I've been standing here for over 3 hours. Can you even do it? If you don't move soon, I'm going to sleep. But before he could finish, he saw the woman's shoulders suddenly twitch. Then, she suddenly turned her head and let out a shrill scream. At the same time, all the live stream footage suddenly went black. This scene also startled the Dragon Nation citizens. Good, I'm wide awake now. I'm more energized than ever. Mom asked me why I wasn't sleeping yet. I showed her the recording of what just happened. Now she's huddled under the covers with me, shivering. My live stream's black screen didn't return to normal until half an hour later. Looking at Ugly 8 again, he was sleeping soundly and peacefully, as if everything that just happened had nothing to do with him. But the higher-ups in Longwa couldn't sit still, because the last scene was so bizarre. They had to take it seriously. But this also proves that I made the right choice not bringing the ugly cat into the bedroom. That cat has a serious problem. I should quickly text Dimitri. Remind him again to stay away from the cat. Meanwhile, my bizarre live stream footage appeared in the conference rooms of various world leaders within an hour. Japan, which has been constantly clamoring against China, is particularly excited at this moment. They judge the cat's strange changes to be the result of my violating the rules. They are all hoping for my early demise. Meanwhile, the US high-level officials are watching the screen with a look of disdain, their heads held high. They believe my good luck, and China's, has come to an end. Only Pakistan's high-level officials are worried. They are glued to the screen, cheering me on. They even sent a secret telegram to China. I declared that I would always stand with Longwa. The next morning, I received a warning from higher-ups as soon as I woke up. This is the second time they've warned me about the cat's danger. What exactly did they see last night? Could there be a woman hidden inside Ugly? but even if ugly is truly part of something strange, as long as I continue to rebel and break these rules, so he must be unable to do anything to me right now. Otherwise, he would have taken action against me yesterday. I wouldn't be alive until now. I've roughly sorted out my thoughts. After thinking it through, I'm no longer worried about Ugly's changes. I opened the cumbersome bedroom door. I walked into the living room. After glancing at Ugly, who was licking its paws on the sofa, I went straight to the restroom. But when I entered the restroom, I found that the word death on the wall last night was really gone. The wall was smooth. It was as if those scratches had never appeared. Seeing this, I had a guess. That Ugly thing definitely has a problem. Otherwise, how could a cat so perfectly handle those scratches? Sure enough, I shouldn't have been so nice to him. Then I went to the kitchen and started cooking noodles. And the ugly monster still got cat food. But as I was enjoying my breakfast, the live streams of the other selected participants were deathly silent, because their rooms were still dark. It was impossible to tell whether it was day or night, simply because they got the time wrong. An entire nation was descended upon. Hundreds of rule-based ghost stories directly annihilated it. It's because the earth is now shrouded in rule-based ghost stories. If the chosen ones of various countries fail the challenge, it will bring immeasurable disaster to the entire nation. But at this time, within the world of rule-based ghost stories, besides me and the chosen one from Pakistan waking up on time, the live streams of the chosen ones from other countries are all deathly silent. It's impossible to tell whether it's day or night. This also puzzled the high-ranking officials of various countries in the outside world, until they discovered that Pasha and I shared a commonality. That is, we both took down wall clocks and used them as alarm clocks. This means that Rule 4 is actually a rule that is partly right and partly wrong. And within the world of Rule of the Weird, getting the time wrong is fatal. Once the challenge times out, they will face punishment several times more cruel than normal elimination. A great nation once vanished overnight because of this. Now, seeing their chosen one still asleep, high-ranking officials from various countries are frantic. Only the U.S. High Command remains relatively calm. They were the first to send a prompt to their chosen one. Other countries followed suit. However, as the chosen ones were awakened one by one, their 3 precious hint opportunities are all used up. Now, besides Longwa and Pakistan, which have one last hint opportunity left, all other countries have run out of hint opportunities. Those outside the screen can only watch. And inside the strange tale world, the chosen ones who have been awakened understand what's going on. Regarding my lead again, John from the US is extremely angry. It's like the movie's protagonist suddenly had his spotlight stolen by an extra. He couldn't accept it. But what he didn't know was, this isn't Hollywood. Here, I, the rebellious war god, am the overpowered protagonist. And little Wobo, with his pants down, still hasn't grasped the situation. He still thinks I'm a mere clown. I'd made up my mind to follow John from the US wholeheartedly, but I didn't care about all that. After breakfast, I turned on the TV again, and continued my loafing life. But the remaining chosen ones weren't so relaxed. They urgently organized all the information they had received. Mom's note only contained 10 rules. For now, Rules 1, 6, 7, 8, and 10 are correct. Rules 2 and 3 are incorrect. Rule 4 is a mix of right and wrong, while Rules 5 and Rule 9 are currently inconclusive, but they clearly contain contradictions. Rule 5 also has a very strange point. It doesn't mention the word neighbor. Does that mean I shouldn't open the door to strangers? But I can open it for a neighbor. But how can I be sure it's a neighbor knocking, and not something else, something spooky? Just then, almost simultaneously, knocking sounds came from the rooms of all the selected participants. The sudden noise scared them silent. Only I, who was watching Boonie Bears, howled at the door. Who is it? It's me. I'm your neighbor. I heard the noise outside. It sounded like a very polite man. Then I got up and walked to the door. I simply opened the door. And it caused tens of millions of people in China to cry. It didn't take long for the news to spread globally. Countries led by the United States gloated over my misfortune, because I was currently in the world of strange tales. The slightest mistake would not only kill me, but also implicate my country. It turned out that just now, almost simultaneously within the world of strange tales, all the selected ones heard a knock on the door. Because Rule 5 clearly stated, never open the door. Don't open it, even if someone knocks. So everyone else was sweating with fear, unable to move. But I alone felt the sound outside the door was rather polite, so I got up and went to open it. But after I opened the door, I found no one outside. Just as I was still looking around in confusion, a strange figure suddenly appeared, speeding towards me, and at that moment, accompanied by countless screams from the outside world, my live stream went black. Seeing this, almost everyone in Longwa instantly collapsed to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Their eyes were filled with despair, because they knew I had been eliminated, and the rule of the bazaar was about to descend. What Longwa faced would be utter annihilation. Meanwhile, several countries led by the United States also saw my broadcast, and gloated, applauding. They all believed that my rash decision had caused Longwa to lose all hope. and that Longwa's era was about to end. They mockingly expressed their desire to witness our demise firsthand. 5 minutes passed. But to the disappointment of other countries and to the surprise of Longwa, the rule of the bazaar didn't arrive. Everything was as usual. Everyone was surprised and astonished at this moment, because they simply didn't know what had happened. But the people of Longwa were staring intently at my live stream, hoping for a miracle. However, the very next second, the miracle actually happened. After my screen went black for a full 10 minutes, it actually returned to normal, seeing me unharmed. The whole of Longwa erupted in cheers. I laughed and reassured everyone. Sorry, I was just attacked by something strange. The screen was also blocked by the strange phenomenon, but it's fine now. And my arrogant statement completely ignited the whole of Dragon Nation. What, just attacked by a strange phenomenon? You're making it sound too easy. I'll give you a perfect score for that show of confidence. Don't let it get to your head. My words brought great honor to Dragon Nation. This is the first time anyone has dared to be so unconcerned about the paranormal, but some rejoice, while others grieve, seeing me return safely. The United States and other countries were thrown into disarray. Japan, in particular, was beside itself, shouting about a conspiracy. Meanwhile, within the strange occurrences, the knocking continued relentlessly. Because besides me, no one else dared to get up and open the door. The other selectees were still huddled on the sofa, trembling. But because they hadn't responded for a long time, the knocking at the door rocked the room. The loud banging on the door frightened Pow. The selected player, Park Busong, covered his head with both hands, breaking down in a panic. His eyes red, he shouted at the door, "Stop knocking. Who are you? What do you want?" The words had just left his mouth, when the banging on the door outside immediately stopped. But just as Park Buchong thought everything was alright, a large knife suddenly sliced through the door. Such a shocking scene scared Park Buchong so badly that he lost control of his bladder and bowels. He cowered on the sofa, babbling incoherently. Seeing Park Buchong's cowardly appearance, the South Korean citizens naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. A barrage of verbal attacks followed. Meanwhile, the high-ranking officials of South Korea, watching the stream of comments, were also angered to the point of fainting. It felt as if they had eaten something as unpleasant as Park Buchong's. You know what? This continued for another 30 minutes. Finally, the noise outside subsided, but everyone remained tense, afraid the strange thing would suddenly burst in, driving them all away. Only I was calm and unhurried. After leisurely eating a steak, I planned to take a nap on the sofa. But at that moment, the knocking came again. Who is it this time? Is this never going to end? I know something strange is happening outside the door, but I still have to open it. It's because I just entered the strange talk world, and drew a 3S level strange talent, lifelong rebellious bone, within the strange talk world, ignoring the rules, right or wrong, directly rebelling, will prevent any strange contamination. I listened to the sounds coming from outside the door again. They still sounded normal, and just as polite as this morning, but this politeness left me speechless. Wasn't once enough? Why are you still here? Actually, the first time I was about to open the door, I already judged that it wasn't my neighbor outside. I ask you, in a world of strange tales, how could a neighbor speak in a normal person's tone? Only something eerie would use a human voice to lure someone to open the door. But although I judged that it wasn't my neighbor outside, according to the rules, I can't open the door. I was advised otherwise, but I had to do the opposite. Only by taking my rebellion to the extreme, could I continue to receive my Heavenly Father's protection. Having prepared myself mentally, I opened the door again. But unlike last time, this time there was truly nothing outside the door. Perhaps the strange occurrences were just a formality, knowing they couldn't harm me. So I just gave up. Seeing this, I was speechless. I spent so long mentally preparing myself before opening the door, and you didn't even attack me? That's so unprofessional. And externally, the people of Longwa, seeing that I was attacked by something strange and yet still dared to open the door, were all incredibly impressed by me. Meanwhile, Park Byeonchang, the chosen one from the Kimchi nation, heard the knocking again. Everyone thought he would cower on the sofa like a quail, as he did the first time, but his actions were shocking. He actually laughed a bit, babbling, then walked straight to the door. It turned out that the first axe attack to the door had driven him insane. Under the gaze of countless eyes from the outside world, Park Byeonchang didn't hesitate. He opened the door directly, but unlike me, Park's live stream went black instantly. Then, a cold voice echoed across the globe. Selected participant Park has been mysteriously consumed. The world of strange tales is about to arrive. Countdown begins. Meanwhile, the outside world exploded. They started to discuss amongst themselves. Why, when both opened their doors, was the IL man unharmed by the strange attack, while Park Busong's outcome was completely different. But South Korea's higher-ups and citizens weren't so relaxed. They all sent Park Busong their heartfelt greetings. Damn it, Park Busong was actually scared silly by a knock on the door. The strange tale is about to begin. I'm so grateful to your ancestors, 8 generations back, to see that Kimchi nation, which repeatedly mocked us, finally arrive. Rules of the strange tale. The Dragon Nation's people all applaud, and with the elimination of Kimchi Nation, now, only two small nations remain in the world of strange tales. One is Pakistan, which previously showed goodwill towards the Dragon Nation. The other is Japan. From experience, major powers possess far more data on rule-breaking tales than smaller nations. This is why the chosen ones from major powers remain calmer when facing incidents compared to those from smaller nations. But the world of rule-breaking tales is complex and diverse. Even if major powers thoroughly research this data, they cannot guarantee a 100% success rate in their challenges. And the consecutive knocking incidents within the rule-breaking tale event made the surviving chosen ones even more cautious. But just as they thought it won't happen a third time, the third knock came. This time, it was at 7 p.m. The renewed knocking once again tightened the nerves of the selected individuals from each country. It was again someone claiming to be a neighbor. They said they were borrowing cat food, offering to exchange it for food. But this time, the voice was clearly different from the previous two. I realized this time it might actually be a neighbor. But I had plenty of food. So I got up, went to the door, and silently refused him. The neighbor was clearly startled. After confirming that I wouldn't open the door, his footsteps gradually faded away in the stairwell. Looking at other countries, John in the US took a completely different approach. He chose to open the door and exchange food with his neighbor. I wasn't attacked by anything strange during the process. But Xiao Wobo, still pantless, was cowering on the sofa just like the previous two times, perfectly embodying the term coward. But just as everyone was mocking him and thought he'd get away with it again, unexpectedly, something unexpected happened. A shadow, like a tentacle, slipped into the room with the neighbor's knock. Suddenly lunging at him, a doll appeared out of nowhere on my balcony, but when I picked him up, he was covered in blood. It's because I'm in the world of rule-breaking tales, where a moment of carelessness could lead to my demise. Meanwhile, the little Japanese man, pantsless, was sitting on the sofa with his head in his hands, shaking from the incessant knocking. He thought that by not opening the door, he could get away with it. But what he didn't know was, a strange shadow had already slipped in with the knock, slowly approaching him. But just as the strange shadow was about to attack the pantsless man, a golden circle of light shone again, and the shadow retreated without success. And the Dragon Nation citizens watching the live stream in the outside world, seeing that the pantsless man had once again dodged the strange attack, began to discuss it heatedly. This is such a steal. What a bargain for this guy. What are those halos around this guy? Are they his drawn talents? I counted them. He has shown those halos 3 times. Without a doubt, they must be his talent. And this talent can grant immunity to eerie attacks. This is at least an A-level talent or higher. He really got incredibly lucky. He actually drew it. Big Ivan never plays by the rules. So what talent did he draw? The second day in the Weird Tales world quietly passed amidst everyone's discussions. And so far, there are 7 chosen ones left in the world of strange tales. They are me from China, John from the USA, Pasha from Pakistan, Ed from the UK, Arthur from France, Adolf from Germany, and the pantsless one from Japan. The third day, morning, each chosen one wakes to their alarm. But when they look again at the note their mother left, they find several new rules have been added. Rule 11, the cat will protect you, but it will also harm you. Rule 12, if you find that your cat is behaving abnormally, kill it immediately. Rule 13, strange women may sometimes appear in the house. Try to communicate with her, and you can completely trust her. Rule 14, time will be confusing. Don't rely on clocks. Rule 15, you can go out, but you have to keep your eyes on your own shoes. Rule 16, don't lock the bedroom door. Rule 17, there's nothing on the balcony. Don't be curious, no matter what you hear. Rule 18, mom isn't coming back. Open the door after 7 days. It's all over. And these 8 new rules, which suddenly appeared, also made the selected participants feel uneasy. The first 2 rules alone chilled them to the bone. In the eyes of the other selectees, the cat had always been a good omen. And besides me, they had all been sleeping with the cat for 2 days. But the appearance of rules 11 and 12 sent shivers down their spines. When I woke up and saw the new rules, I also increasingly felt that the ugly thing on the sofa was wrong, but I wasn't the least bit worried. I slapped him again. After 2 resounding slaps, I declared my desire for cat meat today. My terrifying expression caused the ugly creature to shriek. It dashed into the bathroom. As I stood by the window pondering how to deal with the ugly creature next, I noticed a doll suddenly appear on the balcony. It wasn't a cloth doll. It's more like leather. I looked puzzled. Could it be the work of that ugly thing? It wasn't there yesterday. Saying this, I walked over and picked up the doll. But as soon as I picked it up, I felt a chill in my hand. Looking down, I realized that it had somehow become covered in blood. And this blood, it was like insects, burrowing into my hand. But thankfully, I've always been protected by God. A faint golden light appeared on my palm, dissipating the blood. But then, the doll's skin started to rot and peel off. Blood gushed out again. What disgusting thing. So early in the morning. It's sickening, I said, as I threw it into the toilet. After a while, sounds of the ugly doll jumping around came from the toilet. A doll appeared on my balcony, but I didn't hesitate to throw it into the toilet, because it suddenly looked ferocious. And its whole body was filled with an eerie feeling, and my action caused quite a stir among the onlookers in the outside world, because the ugly monster is still in the bathroom. Could this puppet also be part of the weirdness? Ivan is planning to use weirdness to fight weirdness, stealing the bamboo shoots. He's practically taken all the bamboo shoots within a few kilometers. Meanwhile, the scene of me neutralizing the puppet's attack was also witnessed by someone with ulterior motives. US high officials all believe my talent is S-class. Because, for now, both I and Hichikawa are immune to bizarre attacks. But I've exceeded my 3 times immunity limit long ago. They've also realized I'm not easy to deal with. I only hope that John, the chosen one from my country, can surpass the first clearance as soon as possible. Meanwhile, within the Strange Tale world, John from the US is struggling whether or not to use his S-class talent. He has 3 chances to identify incorrect rules. Besides that, his gift also allows him to have a 30-second telepathic conversation with any chosen person. But his 3 chances to discern, since he used 2 of them the past 2 days, he only has 1 left. He's currently agonizing over whether or not to use his last chance to discern the cat's nature. But he ultimately decides against it, because regardless of whether the cat is good or evil, he needs to be wary of it now. So, discerning opportunities is pointless here. Besides, Rule 18 is the most important. The challenge time in the outer world is indeed 7 days. But if this is a misleading rule, it's easy to lose everything. Thinking after 3 days, he decided to use his last chance on Rule 18. With his talent activated, the 3rd identification attempt is exhausted. A clue also appeared on the note Mom left, Rule 18, incorrect. Then John was seen letting out a long sigh of relief. As expected, it was indeed the wrong rule. The big Ivan of Dragon Country certainly wouldn't have expected this. But just as he was grinning with delight, a baby's cry suddenly came from the balcony. John looked puzzled. He felt an involuntary urge to pull open the curtains and look outside. But at that moment, the cat suddenly appeared and stopped him. It meowed incessantly. "Are you trying to warn me not to go?" John crouched down and stroked the cat. Under his gaze, the cat nodded emphatically. Seeing this scene, John also realized that the cat really was protecting him. But it was definitely not just an ordinary cat. Actually, even if the cat hadn't appeared, John wouldn't have risked checking the balcony, because the rules were clearly written. Don't be curious about the balcony. The reason he pretended to go to the balcony, I just wanted to confirm the cat's reaction. Meanwhile, the other selected individuals' homes also echoed with a baby's cries. As for Hikawa, needless to say, his first reaction at this moment was to tremble all over. It's not that he didn't want to check, he simply dared not. And regarding the sudden noise on the balcony, most of those selected chose to ignore it. But Adolf of Berry, his nerves constantly on edge, his mind in chaos, suddenly pulled open the curtains. Before he could react, the puppet lunged at him ferociously. Then came the system's cold prompt. Adolf, the chosen one of Berry, was mysteriously consumed. The world of strange tales is about to descend. Countdown begins. Adolf's elimination plunged the citizens of Berry into immediate panic. But the higher-ups remained relatively calm. Instantly, they released information notifying the entire nation to initiate Level 1 alert. Activating chips. All information regarding the Mama's note was instantly transmitted into the minds of the citizens. This is also the difference between a large country and a small country. Large countries control chip technology, allowing them to transmit information to the public immediately, greatly controlling the number of civilian casualties. But none of this has anything to do with me. At that moment, I was leisurely leaning against the bathroom door, listening to the ugly doll and the toy fighting inside the toilet. I was actually watching Pinky Dinky Doo. A blackened version of Sadako crawled out of the TV, but I wasn't the least bit scared. I turned around and ran into the bathroom to get the doll. Then, right in front of Sadako, I gave the doll 2 hard slaps. Because this doll, just like Sadako, was also part of the strange occurrences. It turned out that this morning, the doll that appeared out of nowhere had been thrown into the toilet by me. A one-on-one with the ugly one. Approaching noon, I only opened the bathroom door after I noticed there was no more noise from inside. I was just about to check out the situation inside, when the ugly one shyly rushed out. I took a closer look and realized that all its fur was gone. It was completely bald. Completely bare. A little bit ashamed. Looks like he lost. Then I saw Ugly lying on the sofa, glaring at me resentfully. Seeing his expression, it seemed he still wasn't convinced. So I jokingly said, "Didn't you two finish the match just now? Or should I get it out and you two can have another go?" But before I finished speaking, I saw Ugly on the sofa let out a strange cry. I jumped 3 meters high. I frantically hid under the table. Ugly's scared expression was seen by the online audience watching the live stream from the outside world. They all praised my skillful maneuver. It seems the puppet is still superior. Suddenly, I feel a little sorry for Ugly. This time, he's met his match. Using the weird to fight the weird is a good strategy. What if the rule of strange tales descends upon the dragon bone again? We'll do the same. Forget it. We're just watching the big coat wristband do it. If we did that, the grass on our graves would be 10 feet high by now. While everyone was excitedly discussing this non-stop, I had already taken the doll out of the toilet. The doll only had 2 ugly scratches on it, left by. There were no other wounds. But as I held the doll and examined it, it was staring at me with its dark eyes. Then, its face gradually contorted into a grimace. Its mouth visibly curled upward. Seeing this, I acted quickly, and ripped the doll's mouth open with my own hands. I secretly rejoiced in my heart. Luckily, I was clever. I physically interrupted his spellcasting. I avoided a fierce battle, thinking this thing is useless now. I could use it to guard the door tonight. Then I gave him 2 hard slaps before throwing him back into the toilet. I leisurely went to have lunch. Lunch today is steak again. I'd really like to try something different. But this is the rules of Weirdness World after all, not a 5-star resort. And I don't have any other ingredients at home. I'll just have to make do. If the other chosen ones heard me think this, they'd probably all be furious. After I finished eating, I lay on the sofa and turned on the TV, just like before, to watch the long-running series, Pink Naughty Pig. But I hadn't watched for long. When the opening scene appeared again, a creepy figure, with disheveled hair and looking even worse than Sadako, slowly crawled out of the TV. I had never seen such a horrifying sight. I ran into the bathroom and took out the doll. In front of the creepy figure, I gave the doll 2 resounding slaps. I happily finished, only to see the puppet and the weird thing staring at me with a dumbfounded expression. The puppet didn't know why I did that. The weird thing didn't know what to do next. After a minute of stalemate, the weird thing finally remembered its duty, and pounced on me, claws and teeth bared. After all, it had to prove that it always maintained its professional ethics. So weird, this Sadako cosplayer. Although she's ugly, she bowed to me. It's because I'm the legendary big slap god. I'll slap anyone without hesitation. It turns out that just now, after I slapped the doll twice, I thought this weird thing would back down, but after recovering, it still wants to cause trouble. I can only use my ultimate move again. I pulled out the ugly monsters hiding under the table, one by one. Continuing in front of the strange beings, I slapped the ugly monsters twice. After those 2 slaps, they were instantly dumbfounded. Those strange beings, in their different forms, stared blankly at me, completely stunned. They remained like that for quite a while. The strange beings realized my status in this house. They actually stood up and respectfully bowed to me. It neatly crawled back into the TV. The weird things that crawled out of the TV are definitely not as scary as real dolls and ugly monsters. Seeing that both of them got beaten up, he didn't dare act recklessly. Thus, I successfully avoided another tragedy. I feel somewhat great. My crisis is over. But the live stream effect was explosive. The outside world's onlookers were completely shocked. What in the world is this? De Yuan has unlocked a new position. Seeing this, I'm completely dumbfounded. Why do I inexplicably want to laugh? This Dragon Nation person, is there something wrong with him? What exactly is he doing? De Yuan is truly a breath of fresh air in the world of strange tales. This brawl wasn't just a Dragon Bone incident. Citizens from several other countries found my actions unbelievable. They praised me, saying I could bring peace with humor, and settle disputes with my fighting skills. I'm definitely the #1 person in the world of strange tales. High-level officials from various countries began paying more attention to my live stream. The high-level officials from the football country and the never-setting sun country even sent coded messages to Dragon country as a gesture of friendship. But at this time, there were also those who were unhappy. High-level officials in the US and Japan are now shrouded in gloom. Japan, in particular, is mobilizing the entire nation to monitor my every move. They intend to confront China to the bitter end. Meanwhile, China's leadership has received overtures from the UK and France. However, they are well aware of the true intentions behind these fence-sitters' calls. They plan to accept the overtures for now, but remain highly vigilant. My performance this time has completely exceeded the leadership's expectations. Everyone thinks that as long as I can handle the cat situation, success in the challenge isn't impossible, and my last remaining hint will help me at the most crucial moment, ensuring I can successfully complete the challenge. Inside the strange tale world at this moment, I didn't know my actions had caused such a stir outside. I was still leisurely frying steak. I planned to have a good meal and rest early. After all, a big fight with the old man requires stamina. But at that moment, the sound of high heels suddenly came from the living room. Turning around, I saw a woman standing behind me. I didn't know when she had gotten there. Our eyes met. It almost scared me to death. I remember it clearly. All the doors and windows in the house were locked from the inside. This woman appeared as if out of thin air. And at that moment, I remembered the contents of my mother's note. Rule 13, strange women sometimes appear in the house. Try to communicate with her, and you can completely trust her. My mind raced. If this rule is correct, then I need to understand this woman now, but I don't want to, because here, I must rebel to gain the protection of the gifted. So after a simple glance, I simply walked out with my steak, and the first thing I did when I left was search the whole house for the ugly one. But strangely, the monster disappeared at this moment. Could it be, as the Dragon Nation's higher-ups suggested, that this woman is connected to the monster? Just thinking about the monster's skin being torn open, and this woman emerging from his bloody body. I get goosebumps. Could it be because I slapped the monster a few times? This woman couldn't help but come find me for revenge. Wait, could she be the mother who left the note? Could this woman be the mother who left the note? Could it be because I slapped ugly monster several times, that he couldn't help but transform into a woman to seek revenge on me? But just as I wanted to go back to the kitchen to check on that woman, to look for clues, I found that she had vanished without a trace. I'm completely baffled. I don't understand what happened at all. It appeared out of nowhere, and then disappeared just as mysteriously. With countless questions, I checked the entire kitchen again carefully, but still found no useful clues. But the onlookers in the outside world could vaguely sense. The two women who appeared, though similar, were subtly different. Meanwhile, the same woman appeared in the homes of the other chosen ones. Arthur, from Soccerland, seeing that this woman who appeared out of nowhere didn't immediately harm him, concluded that Rule 13 was likely correct. So he proactively approached and communicated with her, even showing considerable trust in her. I hoped to get some useful information from him, but our communication wasn't going smoothly, because the woman didn't say a word the whole time. The woman simply gave Arthur a strange smile before vanishing into thin air. Watching the woman disappear, Arthur was dumbfounded. He stood there, completely bewildered. But unlike me, he quickly discovered a note where the woman had disappeared. Opening it, he found that the note contained only a short sentence. I am not I. What on earth did that mean? He had no way of knowing. The woman's appearance and departure lasted only about 10 minutes, and according to the rule's judgment, a total of 3 people received the woman's note. Without exception, they had absolutely no idea what the sentence meant. Returning to my side, the woman disappeared less than 2 minutes later. The ugly monster crawled out from under the sofa. Looking at the suddenly appearing ugly monster, I also frowned, because I had clearly checked under the sofa just now. There was no sign of the ugly monster at all. This also confirmed my judgment. The ugly monster and the woman could only appear one at a time. I was secretly relieved. It's a good thing I didn't get close to her initially, bringing her into the bedroom. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Looks like I'll have to leave her outside tonight. And of all the chosen ones, besides me and John, who also realized the cat wasn't simple, everyone else still brought the cat into their bedrooms. For now, the cat seems perfectly normal, so they didn't notice anything unusual about it. At midnight, everyone else's cats remained unchanged, but the cat John left in the living room was meowing frantically and scratching at the door. John could only break out in a cold sweat, lock his door, and pretend to be asleep. But compared to the cat in John's room, Ugly's changes were significantly more terrifying. If the cat in John's room is in the early stages of blackening, then that ugly monster has definitely reached the late stages. Under the gaze of countless Dragon Nation citizens, that suffocating scene played out once more. The ugly monster in the living room was first seen sitting eerily and quietly, moonlight illuminating its bald body, looking especially creepy. The ugly monster's body was hairless. From the back, it looked like a naked child. In a moment, he stood upright. His 2 clawed feet ripped open the outer skin of its body. After a bloody struggle lasting 10 minutes, a woman, writhing, finally emerged from the grotesque creature's body. Unlike last time, the woman didn't run around, but instead, it stared directly at my bedroom. It came towards me. This creepy doll unexpectedly became my protector tonight, because I placed it in front of my bedroom door before I went to sleep. It blocked all the woman's attacks for me. It turned out that just now, the woman who emerged from the cat's belly was different from last time. She went straight for my bedroom. The woman's face was still unseen, her whole being radiated an eerie aura. Then, he was seen suddenly gripping the doorknob tightly. He was trying to open the door. This scene left the viewers watching the live stream late at night breathless with fear. But thankfully, I always lock my bedroom door before bed, so the door didn't open. But just as everyone breathed a sigh of relief, the woman exerted force with her hand. The lock instantly deformed. Soon, she ripped it off. She threw it violently onto the ground, and at that moment, whether it was the sound of the lock that woke the doll, or the doll sensed danger, the doll, which had been keeping its head down, suddenly had red glowing eyes. He suddenly looked up, staring intently at the woman. He revealed a ferocious smile. Then, he leaped up suddenly. Laughing loudly, he lunged at the woman. But at that crucial moment, the entire live stream suddenly went black. The signal was cut off again. The sudden disruption of the live stream also disappointed the citizens of Longwa. They weren't concerned about the doll and the woman. They were concerned about my safety. I didn't expect the doll to protect Big Ivan. Big Ivan made the right choice again. If I hadn't placed the doll by the bedroom door beforehand, I don't know what terrifying things would have happened. Big Ivan seems relaxed and carefree every day, but actually, he's very meticulous. Amidst the constant discussions, the citizens of Longwa stayed in my live stream from midnight until dawn. It was now the 4th day in the world of Rule of Strange Tales. 7 a.m. My live stream feed finally returned to normal. I was seen yawning, just waking up from bed, opening the door. Sure enough, as I expected, I knew about the noise outside my bedroom door last night. In this state of high alert, even if I knew the strange things couldn't hurt me, I wouldn't dare sleep too soundly. Completely letting my guard down in this strange, rule-based world of bizarre tales is like looking for death. Looking at the mess on the floor, I knew last night must have been a fierce battle. When I found the puppet on the ground, I found him to be quite a sorry sight. His right hand was gone, one of his eyes had been gouged out. His body was even worse, only half of his body remained. Looking at the puppet, I felt sorry for him. After all, he became like this because he protected me, so I decided to sew him up. Though my skills are rather rudimentary, it should still be better than this. And my patching him up wasn't entirely out of kindness. I realized that in the remaining days, the puppet would still be useful. At least with this free bodyguard, I'd be much safer. I don't have to worry about a woman bursting in and beating me up in the middle of the night. What surprised me was, during the stitching process, the doll didn't scare me like it did before. It seemed to have its own consciousness. I slowly stitched it for an hour. I finally completely stitched the doll. Then I put it on the sofa to repair the door lock. And so, I busied myself for another hour or so. Finally, it's done. Looking at the doll and the lock, completely renewed, I have to admire myself. I'm actually a little genius. But when I finished these two things, I found that it was already 12 noon. Something's not right. Sewing a doll and fixing a lock definitely wouldn't take this long. I realized that this clock seems to be running much faster than it did 3 days ago. At this point, I also remembered the content of Rule 14, time will become disordered. So I can't rely on the clock all the time. But the problem is, this clock is the only source I know of that tells the accurate time. If I can't rely on it, how can I judge the passage of time? I just made some noodles. I didn't even add an egg. But this woman appeared out of nowhere and wanted to steal some. It was just after I'd fixed the lock that I noticed the clock was malfunctioning. If I follow the instructions in Rule 14, I can't rely on the clock to tell the time. But I'm naturally rebellious. So I have to look at this from another angle. The rules are designed to make me completely distrust the time on the clock. But I choose to believe it anyway. The clock's whole point is that everything is reversed. And in the strange tale incident, besides me being the first to notice the time disorder, among all the chosen ones, John, who saved the US, also noticed the details of the time. But his choice in this matter is completely opposite to mine. He began to question the accuracy of the clock. And besides the two of us, the other little cards, I don't know what they're doing all day. They haven't noticed the change in time at all. But precisely because they haven't noticed, their subconscious choice became the same as mine. I have talent on my side, but these guys don't. If they don't realize the time issue later, I feel it won't be long before they'll have a falling out. Of course, none of this concerns me. At that moment, I was sitting on the sofa, leisurely watching TV. And the TV show was, incredibly, that creepy cosplay Sadako from the previous episode, or maybe even the one before that, who just jumped into the sewer. Judging by how easily he stretched his body, I felt he must be a professional. Today was unusually calm. But this piece isn't something everyone can face as calmly as I can. Some guys are just bored out of their minds. They insist on going off the beaten path, stirring up trouble. Adler from the never-setting sun country is a prime example. He actually wants to explore the outside world, because there's a rule that says you can go out, but you have to keep your eyes glued to your shoes. It was precisely this rule that led to his flawed judgment. He thought there must be important clues outside the room. Finding them would give him information that others didn't have. This would put him ahead of others, increasing his chances of succeeding in the challenge. But things often don't go as planned. Under the watchful eyes of millions, Edra resolutely opened the door and went out. And then there was nothing more, because she hadn't gone far before being swallowed by the anomaly. Then, a cold system prompt echoed across the globe. The chosen one from the United Kingdom, Edra, has been swallowed by the anomaly. The weird world is about to arrive. Countdown begins. With Edra's elimination. Now, only 6 people remain in the strange tale world. And besides John and me, who have survived to this day through skill and talent, the others are purely lucky. Especially that guy from Japan. The one without pants. A coward. Who drew acting talent, but doesn't know how to use it, wasting this great opportunity. And so, the 4th day passed in an eerie calm. 8 a.m., the 5th day. I opened my bedroom door on time. And I was greeted by the same mess. No surprise there. Last night, the doll and the woman had another fierce battle. Looking at the doll, missing arms and legs, I wore a helpless expression. The arm you just sewed on yesterday is gone again. This woman is truly insane. She just wants to destroy me. I'm constantly sewing. I'm almost becoming a tailor. I don't know how much longer this puppet can last. I sat on the sofa, and sewed the puppet up as quickly as possible. Then I threw it into the toilet, because I've thought about it. Since the woman doesn't let me sleep well at night, then the ugly monster won't have an easy time during the day either. I must get my revenge on her. Anyway, that ugly monster is naturally rebellious and deserves to be dealt with. While the doll and the ugly monster were confronting each other in the bathroom, I went to the kitchen and made myself a bowl of noodles. But as I walked out with the noodles, the woman in the red high heels who was there before reappeared out of nowhere. She sat quietly, motionless. Her eyes made my hair stand on end. But I didn't dare to talk to the woman, because once I spoke to her, I would no longer be protected by my gift. So I sat next to her, and ate my meal in silence. I've decided, that ugly monster is doomed. Nothing can save him. The puppet said so. It all happened just now. I ignored the woman who appeared out of nowhere. I acted as if she wasn't there, and started slurping noodles. But just as I finished a large bowl of wide noodles, I looked up, only to find that the woman had disappeared again. But this time, she left me a note. The blood-red writing on it was especially eye-catching. Solve it before 12 noon. I'll find you tonight, kitty. I stared at the note in my hand, a little dumbfounded. Is the ugly creature who's been with me for so many days going to be beaten? And I'm not sure if this counts as a new rule. If this statement is a rule, logically, I should do the opposite to receive God's protection. But if it's not a rule, then I need to consider the true purpose and meaning of this statement. If this woman is the same one who tried to kill me last night, then her words need further consideration. But I have a feeling that this woman didn't mean me any harm just now. I'm completely baffled. On the one hand, I felt the woman who appeared just now was the so-called mother. On the other hand, I felt she and the woman who appeared outside the bedroom door last night were likely the same person. But if it was the same person, why was their attitude so different? I couldn't understand at all. But just then, a terrible scream came from the bathroom. I rushed into the bathroom to check. But I found that Cho Bugwai had already been taken care of by the puppet. Seeing this scene, a feeling of unease rose up from my heart. Because everything that happened today far exceeded my expectations. It made me feel panicked for the first time. I don't understand why the puppet did this. Although he made a mess of Cho Bugwai, but I didn't intend to kill any ugly animals. Why would it suddenly attack? Could it be because the doll overheard the information I just read from the note? I should have known. This doll isn't an ordinary toy, but, in that case, it's done me a big favor. Because regardless of whether the information on the note was against the rules, I'm no longer affected. Meanwhile, the other chosen ones were all staring blankly at the notes left by the woman. They faced the same dilemma as I did, because in the note my mother left, there were several rules about the cat. But besides me and John from the US, the other four hadn't noticed anything unusual about the cat so far. If Rule 12 is correct, then the note left by the woman contradicts the rule. So, after a fierce internal struggle, Arthur Ivanov, pantsless, chose to keep the cat. Pasha, however, having received a final warning from high-ranking officials in Pakistan, firmly chose to follow me and get rid of the cat. As for John from the US, his cat was left in the living room for 2 nights before. Things had already become somewhat abnormal. The choice wasn't difficult for John. But the timing was a huge problem. Because the note left by the woman stipulated that the cat had to be dealt with before noon. But John didn't trust the time on the wall clock, so he couldn't be sure what time it was. The wall clock showed 12:01. But according to John's estimation, the clock was several hours fast, so he thought there was still time to solve it. Then he didn't hesitate. He instantly lunged at the cat. Only I lay down like this. John chose to solve it. Was the cat right or wrong? What will happen next? I have no way of knowing. 10 p.m. The 5th day is almost over. At this moment, I'm sitting in the living room, looking tired, watching the cold, ugly thing, waiting for the woman to arrive. I'm not sleeping in the dead of night, but sitting tiredly in the living room, watching the cold, ugly thing. It's because this woman left me a note saying to get rid of the kitten before noon, or she would come find me tonight. 10 p.m. tonight. Just when I was so sleepy I could barely keep my eyes open, the woman arrived as promised. But this time, she didn't appear out of thin air like before, but right in front of me. It crawled out of the ugly woman's corpse. Witnessing the whole thing, I felt a little nauseous. Suddenly, I regretted it a little. Didn't this woman leave a lure to fight me? Where's the doll? Calling the doll. Just as I ran to get the doll, I thought they were about to start a big fight. But unexpectedly, the woman stood before me and spoke. And her first words were, "Thank you." I was completely dumbfounded. The woman didn't explain. Instead, she started recounting what happened. It turned out that she was the one who left all the rule slips. She was the so-called mom. She realized she had become part of the strange phenomenon, so she could only become a cat to stay here, because she had to wait for her child here, her real child. But ultimately, she understood she couldn't wait any longer. That's why she left a note suggesting a solution to the cat problem, to free herself from the strange control, to regain her clarity. The woman's voice became increasingly choked with sobs, just like a normal mother expressing her longing for her child. And at that moment, I was no longer afraid in front of him, because I saw a persistent and great motherly love. Then, after the woman finished her final, "Thank you," he completely disappeared before my eyes. I stared at the spot where the woman had vanished. After a long while, he finally turned his head to the doll and said, "Cry if you want to," because I realized the doll might be her child. So every night, I would rather be maimed and broken, than hurt the woman. And the woman left me. I am not my note. That's understandable, too. The daytime her is the real her. But the nighttime her has become part of something uncanny. The doll was now crying her eyes out. Although the doll couldn't make a sound, tears were falling one after another. I didn't know how to comfort her, so I could only stay beside her quietly. Soon, a system prompt broke the sorrowful atmosphere. Hidden within ordinary life is a great love. That is a mother's love, firm and profound. Chosen 1, plus 10,000. Congratulations on your perfect clear. Mom's note, 5-star clear evaluation, PR bonus. Doll's uncanny resistance plus 1. Current uncanny resistance, 1%. The puppet is a strange part of the bizarre world of the ghost story. At a critical moment, he will protect your safety. And then I realized that the first sentence on Mom's note was also a rule, and it was a wrong rule. The time limit for Mom's note challenge was actually only 5 days. There were actually clues hinting at this earlier. It's just that no one thought of this. For example, the food in the refrigerator was only enough for 5 days from the start. I secretly rejoiced. Luckily, I made the right choice. Otherwise, I would have foolishly waited until the 7th day. Then I saw a black mark quietly appear on my arm. This is the clearance talent I won, and this talent can be kept for use in the next level. Meanwhile, the outside world exploded. Because of my 5-star victory, Dragon Kingdom received a special reward. The lifespan of all citizens in Dragon Kingdom increased by 10 years. Citizens of Dragon Kingdom reported that their backs no longer ached, their legs no longer hurt, and even my uncle, who had been paralyzed for many years, stood up from his bed. But some people rejoice while others worry. High-ranking officials in the US and Japan are now furious, mutually blaming each other in a fit of rage. It's about to explode in their faces. But none of that concerns me, because I need to start preparing for 3 days from now, the next US jump candidate. Although the cat problem was solved, they're still being consumed by the uncanny. It was only because he misjudged the time and it was past noon. It turned out that just now, after I successfully completed my mother's note, I had been transported to the real world amidst the eager anticipation of the Dragon Nation's people. After returning, I enjoyed the highest treatment befitting a hero. But at the same time, the other chosen ones in the rule of weird tales faced different fates. Pasha from Pakistan, following the instructions from higher-ups. After dealing with the cat, he successfully cleared the level. But because he only received a 1-star rating for clearing the level, he didn't receive any rewards from the ghost story world. After Pasha and I were sent out, there were still 4 people left in the ghost story world. They were John from the US, Arthur from the UK, Ivan from Russia, and, from Japan. He wasn't wearing any pants. At that moment, a woman stood before all 4 of them. But this woman looked rather strange. She looked terrifying. On John's side, after a brief eye contact with him, the woman suddenly lunged forward and fiercely grabbed his neck. Originally, although John judged that the clock was running fast, and he solved the cat at what he believed to be the correct time, he didn't realize that the previous night was unusually long. The clock had already returned to the correct time by then. Rule 14 was actually a misleading rule. In this way, John, with regret, was eliminated by the bizarre moment. The remaining 3 looked at the woman in front of them, completely dumbfounded, face full of terror. They had no idea what happened, because a second before the woman appeared, they hadn't noticed anything unusual about the cat. The woman didn't waste words. She only said, "Time's up," and swallowed them one by one. Immediately after, they heard a system prompt announcing the United States, John, Football Nation, Arthur, Grizzly Nation, Ivanov, Japan, Pantsless. Swallowed by the uncanny. The world of strange tales is about to descend. Countdown begins. Meanwhile, in the outside world, the higher-ups in the US and Japan, though angry, aren't afraid. Because they already fully understand the entire process of the mom's note. So, they just need to send the information to the citizens' minds via chips. Even if a bizarre world descends, they could easily handle it. But often things are unexpected. The bizarre rules that descend are not a mother's note, but another random copy. Thus, amidst the curses of the high-ranking officials of the US and Japan, the bizarre rules descended. The losses were heavy, but none of that concerned me. At that moment, I was enjoying the peak of my life like never before. But pleasant times are often short-lived. 3 days passed like that, and it was time to enter the world of the rule-breaking ghost stories again. Just like last time, after bidding farewell to the Dragon Nation citizens, I was transported into the world of ghost stories. I woke up to the system prompt. This challenge's ghost story world is a train heading towards the distance. The train's final stop is Blood Mansion Cemetery Station. This time, you need to play the role of train attendants. Before playing the role of train attendants, please put on your work uniform properly. Be sure to remember your carriage number, and carefully read the attendant rules. Your responsibility is to ensure that your carriage successfully reaches the destination. The estimated travel time to the terminal station is 3 days. As the prompt tone faded, I skillfully glanced around. Remembering this is carriage number 6, I quickly pushed open the door, because I needed to find the attendant's rules immediately. I entered the rule-breaking world again. My top priority now is to find the flight attendant's manual. Because only by finding the manual as soon as possible, can I call people without any worries, just like in my mother's note. I looked around, remembered the car number, and then pushed the door open. Soon, I successfully found the flight attendant's uniform and manual in the box at the connection of the carriages. I quickly changed into the uniform. You wouldn't believe it, but I actually looked the part in the uniform. Then I opened the rule book and read it carefully. Strange passengers will appear on the train, but no matter what kind of passenger, serving them well is your duty. Rule 1, in the face of passengers' difficulties, you must choose to swallow your anger. Rule 2, if passengers urinate or defecate, smoke, etc., in the carriage, please ignore them directly. Rule 3, it's common for things to get lost on the number 3 carriage. If a passenger asks you to help them find something lost, you can refuse. But if it's a child who keeps losing things, then you have a duty to help them. Rule 4, when a child is running around in the carriage, don't stop them. What's wrong with them? After all, he's still a child. Rule 5, food will be provided in the carriage, but absolutely do not take food from the carriage connections. Rule 7, there is only one attendant per carriage, and they don't sell Luzhou cuisine in the carriages. There are 17 rules in total. I'll write the rest later, let's just write these few for now. Otherwise, the video will be too watery. And you've all written it down, but you can't remember it. After carefully reviewing the entire crew manual, I discovered that the last page of the manual was torn out. Clearly, there are more inconsistencies in the crew manual than just that. And the last page of the crew manual is likely hidden somewhere in this carriage. To understand all the rules, I have to find that last page before the passengers board. Then I began a frantic search. But I've searched every carriage and haven't found that so-called last page. The connections between the front and rear of carriage number 6 are currently completely sealed. Could it be that the last page of the attendant's manual isn't on the train? But although I haven't found the remaining page, after all this searching, I've gotten a pretty good understanding of the whole train. The sleeping environment on the train is quite good, actually. Most of them are comfortable soft sleepers. My own berth, however, is at the very end of the carriage. Because I couldn't find the rest of the attendant's rules, I sat down at my berth with a pained expression. I even felt like farting. But just as I took out the doll, preparing to bend down to search under the bed again, I suddenly noticed the doll was staring intently at the pillow. I froze for a moment. Could there be something in the pillow? I pressed down on it. Sure enough, a rustling sound, like paper, came from inside. After taking the pillow apart, I found a piece of paper, just like the flight attendant's manual, had slipped to the floor. This doll is amazing. I stroked the doll's head. He hurriedly picked up the tea and looked at it. He saw that the paper clearly recorded the rules he hadn't finished reading earlier. Rule 11, respecting the elderly and caring for the young is a traditional virtue. If a passenger wants to swap pillows with you, please give them your comfortable pillow. Rule 12, no matter what happens, the windows in the carriage must never be opened. Rule 13, there can never be pets in the carriage. If you see a pet, please leave its sight as soon as possible. Rule 14, if someone in the carriage is injured or has a relapse of an illness, please try to help them. There are 3 more rules, but they're too long to write down. And I had just finished reading the rules, when I heard many footsteps and voices coming from the originally quiet carriage. I went to the carriage corridor to take a look. The originally empty carriage was now full of people. Arguments and noise filled the air. Amidst the chaos, the train started to move. But at the carriage connection, I suddenly noticed several men gathered together, preparing to smoke. I strode forward, and under the bewildered gaze of 2 men, without a word, I snuffed out their cigarettes. That's how I broke a rule right from the start. And so begins episode 2 of my rebellious journey. Please look forward to it. I slapped 2 passengers right at the beginning, just because those 2 dared to smoke in the carriage right in front of me. Although, according to Rule 2, I should have simply ignored passengers smoking in the carriage. But who am I? Born a rebel. Dagger fights, conquering the world. Once, I, the legendary brawler, beat those ugly guys so badly they were completely dumbfounded. So even as a newcomer, I wouldn't follow these petty rules. But these 2 little fans don't seem to realize how powerful I am. They're angrily preparing to confront me. I just banged that "no smoking" sign next to me really hard. After seeing the sign, the 2 of them knew that Li Kuei wouldn't come any closer. But they still muttered under their breath, saying they would go to the toilet later to smoke, to see what I could do to them. I listened to their unabashed conversation, and instantly flew into a rage. They really don't know how powerful I am. How dare you try to trick me to my face? I couldn't stand it. I spun around, grabbed one of the little calemites by the collar, and slammed him against the wall. I viciously threatened them to not cause me any trouble. Actually, these so-called passengers weren't really people anymore. They were all consumed by the strange entity, and staying here, they've become part of it. So there was no need to be polite to them. I bullied and threatened them, making them very unhappy. Immediately after their mutation, they intended to fight me. But I wasn't worried at all. I pulled out the doll hidden in my clothes and shoved it in their face. The doll seemed to have been pent up for days. The ugly thing's departure left him with nowhere to vent his rage. Instantly, his eyes glowed red and his whole body emanated. It was emitting black energy and about to charge. Luckily, I quickly pulled back the puppet. Otherwise, those two little brats would have grass a foot high on their graves. Looking again, the two of them were already paralyzed with fear, trembling. The puppet itself is a high-level anomaly. They have an instinctive fear of it. Seeing them so cowardly, I didn't bother with them anymore. But turning around, I found an old woman leading a child to defecate in the corridor. "You're such a worry." I immediately shouted to stop them, threatening that if they went in the aisle, I'd spank that child's bottom into 8 pieces. The auntie who was about to let the child relieve themselves was also startled. After a strange look flashed in her eyes, she reluctantly took the child to the toilet. After my lesson, the man and the older woman made the whole carriage realize that I, the attendant, wasn't someone to be trifled with. The carriage, which had been lively with chatter, instantly fell silent. The atmosphere plummeted to freezing point. This is actually what I wanted. Taking the initiative is always better than waiting to be controlled by these passengers. Meanwhile, Ito Ibra, the newly elected representative from Japan, was patiently advising passengers not to smoke. But soon, he was pinned to the ground and violently assaulted by several male passengers. They mocked and rubbed him, saying, "A mere attendant dares to interfere with our business? Haven't you ever experienced the harshness of society?" After beating him, the passengers spat several mouthfuls of phlegm in his face. Ichiro Ito had never seen such a scene. He then huddled in the corner of the carriage, weeping sadly. As Ichiro Ito began to question his life's choices, the chosen ones from other countries also did not receive a warm welcome from the passengers. However, there were exceptions. The chosen one from Grizzly Country, Nicola, revealed his S-class talent right from the start. This man, simply by exchanging pillows with the old man, infuriated the high-ranking officials of War Widow Nation. They even used a precious hint opportunity, determined to make him, by any means necessary, return the pillow. Because this is the rule-breaking talk world, where a moment's carelessness can lead to being misled by the rules, thus eliminating them, and each selected participant has one chance to draw an initial talent upon their first entry. Nikolai, the chosen one from Turtle Bear Nation, showcased his S-class talent right at the start. His talent is called Leader. It allows his paintings to hold absolute authority, giving his passengers a certain degree of obedience. Seeing this, the onlookers in the outside world couldn't sit still. Everyone is speculating about what my talent actually is. From Mom's note to this train heading to the distant lands, they've seen me break the rules repeatedly, but they don't know why I can ignore the correctness of the rules. I can even be immune to the strange devouring. But my talent is top secret. Besides myself, probably only a very small number of high-ranking officials in Longwa have a general understanding. Meanwhile, inside the rule of the strange world, after I patrolled the carriage, I didn't find anything unusual. It seems my preemptive strike did intimidate these passengers. They seemed to behave themselves, and no further abnormalities occurred. Then the sound of the door opening rang out. I looked up. It was exactly 7 a.m. The sealed door at the connection of the front carriage suddenly opened. An eerie hand reached out from the other side. Then, a cold voice came from the fog. "Car 6 attendant, your breakfast has arrived. Your breakfast has arrived." The hand retracted after placing down the breakfast. The door closed immediately afterwards. Seeing this, I froze. Because when I opened the door just now, I had been staring at the space behind the hand, but I found that behind the hand wasn't the train carriage, but a fog that obscured everything. This made me wonder if the two ends of the carriage I was in were actually connected to a real train. Did other carriages even exist? Was it really as Rule 8 stated? Attendants can't leave their assigned cars. I won't dwell on what I don't understand. I've decided to eat first, only when I'm full. Will I have the energy to deal with these emergencies? Although Rule 5 clearly states that food from the car connectors must not be eaten, but I can see at a glance that this is actually the same flawed rule as Rule 2. And besides, I needed to rebel against the rules. So the food at the carriage connection wasn't just something to eat, it was something I had to eat. But as I was enjoying my breakfast, an elderly figure suddenly appeared before me. I looked up, and it was an old person holding a pillow, saying the pillow was too hard. I didn't sleep well. "Do you want to switch with me?" I frowned slightly after hearing that. I thought, sure enough, it's come. And it came so quickly. I clearly remember there's a rule in the flight attendant manual, Rule 11, respecting the elderly and loving children is a traditional virtue. If a passenger wants to switch pillows with you, please give the uncle your pillow. This rule may seem unremarkable at first glance, but it's from the last page of the flight attendant's manual. If I hadn't known the flight attendant's manual was hidden in the pillow, I might have actually respected my elders and exchanged seats with him. But now, after a polite smile, I simply refused. That is, considering his age. Otherwise, I would have given him a couple more slaps. My sudden change of expression left the old man speechless. But he had no choice. He could only grumble and leave. But he hadn't gone far, when his demeanor immediately changed. The pillow he was holding continuously emitted black energy. At this moment, the other chosen ones faced the same dilemma. However, most chose to refuse the pillow exchange. And thus I noticed something was wrong with the pillow. Therefore, I found the last page hidden inside, but 3 small countries still chose to exchange. Among them was Janpa, which had just been ravaged by the strange tale. Then came the opening scene. The high-ranking officials of Janpa were both anxious and angry. They hurriedly sent a message to their chosen one, urging them to exchange the pillow back. By this time, I had already finished breakfast. I had just stretched and was about to rest. But I was immediately drawn outside by the loud shouting. What's going on again? Right at the start, a major blow for everyone. I'm sorry. To my brothers and sisters who were eating. It turns out that just now, I was about to rest when I was drawn out by a commotion. I went out to see. I found an older woman sleeping in the next bunk was shouting. I went over to find out what happened. And I generally understood what was going on. It turned out that the older woman's freshly made old-style pickled cabbage noodles were missing. While she went to the restroom, her noodles vanished. But the people sleeping in the nearby bunks all said they hadn't touched her noodles. Regarding their statements, my eldest sister was definitely unlucky, so a heated argument ensued. In the spirit of, mind your own business, in the world of strange tales, I didn't originally plan to get involved. I was just about to leave, but then suddenly remembered a rule in the attendance manual, Rule 3, losing things in the third carriage is commonplace. If a passenger asks you to help find a lost item, you can refuse. But if a child is lost, then you have a duty to help them. But I'm naturally rebellious. Mainly, not being rebellious wouldn't work either. Without rebellion, my talent would be useless. So I have to go against the rules. No matter what, I have to help this lady find her instant noodles. At least I owe her an explanation. Then I patted my elder sister's arm, smiling and saying, "Elder sister, don't worry. I'll handle everything." Seeing my excited expression, my elder sister was a little startled. She hurriedly declined, "No need to bother. It's just a bowl of instant noodles." But I couldn't possibly agree. Isn't this trying to kill me? Instantly, I flashed my warm smile again, saying not to worry. It's the flight attendant's duty to protect the safety of all passengers' property. The instant noodles are small, but they are still my responsibility. Leave it to me. My words, earth-shattering and inspiring. My dedication and seriousness earned the respect of my elder sister and all the passengers present. They were all deeply moved by my earnest and practical spirit. But just then, an elderly woman rushed over in a panic, grabbed my hand, and said, "Flight attendant, my grandson is missing. Please help me find him." The elderly woman looked extremely anxious. The passengers around me all looked at me. Just when they thought I would bravely step in and do the right thing, I only said one word. All the passengers present were instantly stunned. They couldn't believe that those words came from my mouth. A moment ago, I was so eager to get a bowl of instant noodles. How could my attitude change so drastically? Even the lady next to me was shocked. Hesitantly, she said to me, "Instant noodles are a small matter. Why don't we help him find his child first?" The older sister's words were very reasonable. It caused the surrounding passengers to nod repeatedly, but I remained unmoved. "Sister, I understand what you're saying. But things also have a priority. Finding the child is a big matter. Finding instant noodles is a serious matter too. Don't say any more. I'll get your instant noodles back right away. Otherwise, they'll get soggy later and won't taste good." My serious speech left the passengers around me stunned. Although it felt like something was off, it was hard to refute. The elderly woman next to me saw that I wasn't willing to help, and she made it sound so nice. She glared at me angrily. Then she stormed off to search for her child throughout the carriage. But I didn't care. I greeted the stunned older sister. Then I started looking for my instant noodles. But I searched for over 10 minutes. The entire carriage. I couldn't find any instant noodles with pickled cabbage flavor either. There's no other way. I guess I'll have to check the last place. That's the restroom. I ran to the restroom to look for the instant noodles. If you don't have 30 years of cerebral thrombosis, you definitely wouldn't come up with this crazy idea. But I just happened to not follow the usual path. I don't believe the instant noodles could really vanish into thin air. Then I quickly walked to the restroom door. I shoved open the bathroom door. But as the door opened, a shocking sight met my eyes. There was a child in the toilet, eating instant noodles from inside the bowl. The child, whose face was covered in mayonnaise, grinned at me and invited me to join him. I quickly covered my mouth. I almost threw up my breakfast. But just as I was about to turn and run away, I found a teddy bear behind the brat. Red light flickered in the teddy bear's eyes. Could this be another ugly monster that can transform? A teddy bear-like thing suddenly appeared behind the brat. But I clearly remember a rule in the attendance manual: no pets are allowed in car 13. If you see a pet, quickly get out of its sight. Obviously, the pet mentioned in the rules is this teddy-like thing in front of me. But since the rules say so, running away is definitely impossible. After all, only constant rebellion protects me with my talent. So, since I can't run, I can only stay and fight head-on. Then I pulled out the puppet from my clothes, ready to have a big battle with this teddy anytime. But just then, the old woman who had been searching for her grandson suddenly barged in. Seeing the scene before her, Without a word, she gave the child, whose face was covered in mayonnaise, a good beating. "Didn't I tell you not to eat things randomly, and you're here begging for food again?" the old woman said, while gagging. Clearly, she was about to be sick from the peculiar smell. "But he's all bark and no bite. He didn't use much strength when dealing with the brat. Otherwise, the brat wouldn't have the leisure to make faces at me right now." But that was interrupted by the lady. When I looked towards the restroom, I found that the teddy bear had disappeared out of nowhere. I'm not sure what happened just now, but I'm certain this teddy bear will reappear later. So I decided to take it one step at a time. I'll go back and deal with the instant noodles first. After washing my hands, I quickly went to the second bed. I told my older sister everything I had seen in detail. At that time, my older sister was eating a new bowl of instant noodles. Perhaps my description was too detailed. My older sister was stunned after hearing it. Then, with a strange expression, he covered his mouth and ran to the toilet. It looked like he was about to throw up, and my good deed was unanimously approved by the outside world's onlookers. That older sister had just finished making instant noodles. She hadn't eaten much yet, lost over 10,000. I discovered that the train attendant's brain was a little unusual. Dalawan's greatest skill is speaking nonsense with a straight face. At that moment, although I didn't know what everyone thought of my actions, I was still pleased with myself, thinking, as expected of me, I had done a good deed again. Meanwhile, the other chosen ones also successively encountered the incidents of losing their noodles and losing their children. However, unlike me, almost all the chosen ones chose to find their children first, and most people decisively chose to flee upon seeing Teddy. However, a small number of the chosen ones, because they didn't find the last page of the attendance manual, didn't realize that Teddy was an extremely dangerous being. By the time they noticed something was wrong, it was too late. They saw Teddy in front of them open its bloody maw, spewing countless tentacles, instantly swallowing them whole. A system prompt sounded. The selected players from 5 countries, Puo, Mian, and 3 others, were mysteriously swallowed up in the absurd national war. The strange tale world is about to descend. Countdown begins. At this time, the leaders of the 5 small, insignificant nations collapsed directly to the ground. Because these small countries were among the first to be eliminated in their mother's note, they hadn't even enjoyed a few peaceful days. The rules of the strange tale, Jing, are about to descend again. They simply can't withstand these consecutive blows. If it happens again, they might as well declare national extinction. These high-ranking officials have no choice. They can only ask Longwa for help, offering 5 million tons of grain in exchange for chip technology. These small countries are usually arrogant and overbearing, relying on the US's support to blockade Longwa in the past. Now that we see that Dragon Nation has already bet against the US, it's actually asking Dragon Nation for help. Their nerve is unbelievable. However, Dragon Nation has experienced 5 consecutive rule-breaking tales, and it has indeed suffered greatly. Food is scarce. Therefore, it agreed to the exchange. It stated that the chips will be delivered 1 week later. But at this moment, within the rules of Strange Tales incident, I was sleeping soundly without a care in the world. But I was soon woken up by the noise coming from the carriage. Looks like I have work to do again. I started by giving the brat 2 big boogers, just because he was making a racket in the carriage for no reason, and his parents deliberately indulged his unreasonable behavior. It turned out that just now, I was just about to take a nap. I hadn't been lying down long, when I was woken up by the noise of a bratty child in the carriage, and the noise was getting louder and louder. It seems the parents weren't making any attempt to stop them. Although there's a rule about bratty children, what's wrong with not stopping a child running around in the carriage? After all, he's still just a child. But as everyone knows, disturbing someone's rest is tantamount to murder. What's more, the eerie atmosphere in the carriage is beyond human comprehension. So I don't need to be polite to them at all. I took the doll and quickly walked to the brat's berth. "Brat, stop shouting in the carriage. If you make another sound, I'll spank your bottom into 8 pieces." I only wanted to give him a proper scolding. Unexpectedly, the brat didn't react. But the auntie next to him got upset first. "Hands on hips," she said sarcastically. "Hey, you're such a grown-up, a flight attendant even. Why bother with a child? Kids are playful, and he wasn't bothering anyone. What's it to you?" After lecturing me, she still had the nerve to comfort the brat with a smug look, saying he could play however he wanted. "With me here, no one dares touch a hair on your head. I can tolerate this. This is clearly a dig at me. I tried to advise you kindly, but you wouldn't listen. Then don't blame me." Before the woman's smugness could wear off, I went up and slapped her twice. The old woman was completely stunned after being hit. Her face was full of disbelief. She rushed forward, ready to fight back. But I wouldn't give her the chance. I kicked him to the ground again. What's the point of keeping this unreasonable Shion parent around? Even beating him until he's unable to take care of himself wouldn't be enough to quell the anger. After teaching the old woman a lesson, I looked at the brat. With my temper, that kid's bottom would definitely be blooming. But just then, the woman's face suddenly turned pale, her eyes glowing red. She completely mutated, but I wasn't scared at all. Smiling, I pulled out the doll and said to the old lady, "Is it a strange power?" "Excuse me. I also have one." Then I threw the doll at the old lady, and told it to just teach her a lesson. Don't kill her. My live stream went black again. The onlookers in the outside world immediately exploded with comments. What's going on? Why is the signal blocked every time there's a strange move? Strange methods won't be easily seen by us. If humanity could fully understand these strange things, perhaps the rule of weird tales wouldn't have descended. Meanwhile, Ichiro Ibe in Japan is facing the same situation, but he doesn't seem to be going to teach those brats a lesson. It was more like he was eager to be scolded by the brat. The old lady just gave him a look, and he collapsed in fright. He dared not move for a long time. If it weren't for the fact that Japan was still suffering from yokai invasions and they had no time to spare, their higher-ups would have probably been so angry that they'd launch a surprise attack upon seeing this. Just as the Dragon Nation citizens were furiously criticizing Ichiro Ito, my live stream finally resumed. By then, the battle between the doll and the old lady was already over. The result was obvious. The old woman was beaten black and blue by the puppet. She was no longer arrogant. The child was terrified. He trembled and apologized to me. He said he wouldn't do it again. Seeing his sincere repentance, I didn't want to make things difficult for him anymore. But 2 good hard slaps were still in order. After all, I need to make a deeper impression on him. Then, amidst the brat's loud cries, I happily finished my work. I planned to return to my berth and have a good rest. But halfway there, I ran into a saleswoman. And she said that all snacks and drinks were free for internal staff. But Rule 16 clearly states that except during meal times, beer, melon seeds, and drinks are sometimes sold on the train. If someone recommends something to you, please refuse free snacks on the train. They might attract strange attacks late at night. Just now, I was about to go back to my bed to sleep, when I met a saleswoman along the way. She quietly told me that snacks and drinks were free for staff. I could take whatever I wanted. Seeing this, I didn't hesitate. I immediately grabbed a few bags of sunflower seeds and snacks. But after I had taken the things, I saw the enthusiasm on the face of the vendor pushing the cart suddenly disappear. Then he quickly left from the connecting point of the rear compartment. I was completely baffled. It turned out the connection between the car doors was open, but I didn't know if other people could leave the same way. As for these snacks in my hand, instead, I just tossed them aside, because besides the daily rations, I don't eat anything else. The reason I accepted the vendor's offer was purely to rebel against the rules, to gain the continued protection of the talent. Without Rule 16, I definitely wouldn't have paid the vendor any attention. After all, in this bizarre world of strange rules and ghost stories, it's better to avoid trouble than to invite it. But accepting doesn't necessarily mean you have to take it. Although protected by a natural gift, it's still wise to stay cautious. At this moment, other chosen ones are facing the same choice. Several of the chosen ones immediately decided to accept. But they're not fools either. It's equally clear that this is a bizarre, strange tale world. Although the food in my hands looks perfectly normal, there's nothing wrong with it. There's definitely a rule-based connection. And food isn't scarce right now. So they plan to save it for a rainy day. The first day is almost over. At this point, almost all the chosen ones began to organize the information they had gathered during the day. From what I can see now, Rules 1, 3, 13, and 16 are almost certainly correct, while Rules 2, 4, 5, and 11 are likely incorrect. As for the other rules, I can't yet determine whether they are right or wrong. 8 p.m. The other selected individuals, following Rule 8's instructions, began to switch off the lights in their carriages. But my compartment was as bright as day. Clearly, I didn't intend to turn off the lights. After all, it was so early. The passengers were still having a lively time. So I waited until 10 p.m. The lights in the compartment automatically turned off. But I still tossed and turned. I couldn't fall asleep for a long time, because I kept thinking about what that teddy bear really was. It felt strangely similar to a puppet. Could it be another creepy thing with a mind of its own? And what was the pattern of its appearances? Until midnight, my mind a complete mess, I decided to give up. Then I put the puppet by my bedside. I planned to rest and recuperate first. But not long after, a strange chewing sound suddenly came from the dark carriage. I was startled awake. I opened my eyes, and found the doll already floating, glowing red, blocking my bed. Its eyes were fixed motionlessly on a certain corner of the carriage. But because there was no light, I couldn't see clearly what was in that corner. But the crunching sound made my hair stand on end. I knocked. What on earth was that? I unconsciously spoke out loud. The crunching sound in the darkness stopped instantly. Whatever it was, having its meal interrupted seemed to displease it. It instantly lunged at me. Luckily, the puppet was right in front of my bed. I slapped it and sent it flying. Otherwise, I'd be done for. Then I heard the sound of intense fighting. Clearly, the puppet had already engaged with that thing. The shadow that attacked in the dead of night revealed its true form. It was that creepy teddy bear. It turns out, just now, I was awakened in the middle of the night by a crunching sound and burst into curses. This also startled the shadowy figure that was eating. Instantly, I and my protective doll fought as one. But because the carriage was too dark, I couldn't see clearly what that shadowy figure was. I could only tell from the sounds that the battle was fierce. The fighting continued for more than 10 minutes before abruptly stopping. I hurried over to check. Only the puppet remained in the corner of the carriage. It seems, the battle ended with the shadow's departure. But looking at the puppet's dejected expression, it seems the victory wasn't easy. It must have been a close call. Meanwhile, several of the chosen ones also encountered the shadow, but they didn't have the puppet's protection. I was instantly swallowed by a strange black shadow, and only now, the onlookers finally saw clearly, that the black shadow was that thing that looked like a teddy bear that appeared before. With the elimination of several selected participants, the system prompt sounded again. Selected participants from the UK, Vietnam, and Japan were mysteriously swallowed. The world of strange tales is about to arrive. The countdown begins. 3 more countries have been eliminated. Onlookers in the outside world are also discussing it. High-ranking officials in the former empire on which the sun never sets must be in tears. Their country's last supernatural invasion hasn't even ended yet. I think I understand why they're being attacked by these strange phenomena. The chosen ones who were attacked all accepted food from the salesman during the day. Based on my judgment, the things in their hands are the key to their deaths. Perhaps this teddy-like creature was attracted by the snacks they were holding. They discussed this all night. I have to say, even among the onlookers, there are some smart people. Their analysis is almost spot on. But I can't see these analyses. At that moment, I was squatting on the ground. I carefully re-examined the crime scene from last night. Afraid I might have missed some detail. Except for my flight attendant's manual and my snacks, which were completely chewed up. Everything else was intact. Could it be that the thing last night only came to steal my snacks? I had a general idea in my mind, so I planned to ask the vendor for more food today, and then check on the kimchi situation. The chosen one, Park, is powerless. He's frantically searching for something. It turns out his flight attendant manual has vanished. He searches high and low, but can't find it. He's about to burst into tears. Because according to Rule 9, the flight attendant manual must never be seen by passengers. If a passenger accidentally sees it, immediately eliminate the passenger. This means, if Rule 9 is correct, the loss of the attendant's manual is equivalent to exposing all his weaknesses and vulnerabilities. If the passenger uses the rules in the attendant's manual against him, he'll be completely defenseless. He'll definitely die. But he didn't know that. On the other side of the carriage, a passenger was looking through the attendant's manual, revealing a chilling smile. 12 noon. Lunchtime again. The doors opened on time, but unlike before, this time, besides the wrist, another flight attendant followed Guan. Although I don't know this person, the outside onlookers are very familiar with him. He's the chosen one from the soon-to-be-defunct United Kingdom who was just absorbed. He came over carrying a bowl of steaming hot Luzhou stew. Teacher, this is a special offering from their carriage. It's delicious. I brought some for you to try as well, but according to the attendant's manual, Rule 6, attendants from other carriages sometimes visit. They might offer you Luzhou. Accept it, but Rule 7 states that each carriage only has one attendant, and carriages don't sell Luzhou. These two rules clearly contradict each other. One of them must be wrong. In this situation, what else could I do? Just because I didn't eat the Luzhou he sent, he actually turned his head 180 degrees, and became a ghost to attack me. It turned out that just now, at the connecting passage, after the door opened, besides the hand delivering lunch, a person also came with it. He said it was the attendant from Car 07 who offered a steaming bowl of Luzhou for me to try. Something's fishy. I realized this attendant was definitely up to no good, but I didn't refuse directly. Instead, I took the Luzhou and put it aside, saying I liked it, saving the best for last. Wait, I'll eat this boxed lunch first. Seeing that I didn't intend to eat the Luzhou, the flight attendant got a little anxious. He urged his brother again. This Luzhou just came out of the pot. It won't taste good if it gets cold. You can try it first. Seeing how anxious he was, I'm even more sure this is a trap. So I'm even less likely to fall for it, but I won't refuse him to his face. I just kept going back and forth with him there. I'm basically just keeping him company. Seeing that I wasn't biting, the flight attendant's face gradually darkened. He seemed to realize I was playing him. Then I saw him pretend to leave. After taking a few steps forward, his expression suddenly changed drastically. His head instantly turned 180 degrees. He shouted loudly at me, "Eat! Why aren't you eating? Why aren't you eating?" Then I saw his eyes instantly turn into dead fish eyes. A puff of black air came from his mouth. You've trapped me, but I'm not the least bit worried. I'm just not pretending anymore. Since you've revealed your hand, I have no choice but to reveal mine as well. Then I silently pulled out the doll from my bosom. My live stream went black. The outside world, everyone was used to my live stream going black. Seeing me instantly identify the good and bad flight attendants, the high-ranking officials of Dragon Nation finally let out the breath they'd been holding. They were very satisfied with my performance. They had wanted to give me a valuable hint. Now it seems completely unnecessary. Just as they were relaxed, waiting for my live stream to resume, a cold system notification sounded again. The selectees from France and 4 other countries were mysteriously devoured. The world of strange tales is about to descend. Countdown begins. Everyone was instantly shocked after hearing the announcement. After all, Paris is a major country. Why were they eliminated so quickly? It turns out the strange being deceived the chosen one from Paris, telling him that as long as he accepted the braised dish and ate it, he would receive extra clues. And he could also be guaranteed to leave the carriage alive. The Parisian national selection winner realized it might be a trap, but the gambler's mentality got the better of him. In the end, he decided to take a gamble. The result was predictable. He gambled himself away. And at that moment, my live stream returned to normal. The crisis was over. It was the puppet's doing. The puppet was grinning at me. It seems this opponent is a small fry. It didn't take much effort. The onlookers witnessing this scene were all cheering for the puppet. I'm obsessed with the puppet. I'm crazy for the puppet. I'd run into a brick wall for the puppet. And the scene where the attendant disappeared just now, it also gave me a clearer understanding of the strangeness of the ghost world. The existence of strangeness here isn't limited. It can be dolls, pets, ghosts, or even a mass of black mist. If I can figure out the source of the strangeness in the future, I should be able to completely solve the danger of strangeness descending. Dinner time. The vendor pushing the cart appeared on time in my carriage again. But this time, before the salesperson could speak, I proactively stepped forward and took some snacks. Under the salesperson's surprised gaze, I quietly waited for the dog's arrival. This man, simply for not helping, was turned into a grotesque being by the woman. Opening its bloody maw, it instantly licked him away. And not just him. I encountered the same problem. It was while I hadn't slept, and was quietly waiting for the dog's arrival, that a passenger rushed up to me, urgently telling me that a passenger in the carriage had a sudden mental breakdown, and was about to self-harm, asking me to help immediately. When I heard this, I immediately realized this was another trap, because I currently have 2 contradictory crew regulations before me. They contradict each other. Regulation 14 states that if someone in the carriage is injured or suffers a relapse, I should try to help them. But Regulation 17 says that between midnight and 6 a.m. is a dangerous time, and if someone seeks me out during that period, I should ignore them. If I'm to continue receiving the protection of fate, then I must follow all the rules in reverse. In this situation, if I defy even one rule, it will inevitably become the other rule that I implicitly abide by. I feel like these 2 rules were deliberately designed to counter my talent, but I can't help it. I can only rack my brains, thinking of how to cope. Suddenly, I had a brilliant idea. I thought of a perfect solution. I verbally agreed to help, but remained motionless. That way, I had technically agreed, but not completely, so my talent protection remained effective. My clever maneuver completely baffled the passenger who had asked for help. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I'm thinking, if you've agreed, then hurry up and come with me. The patients are waiting. Why are you still sitting there? Like an old geezer, completely motionless. Then they started urging me to hurry over. And at that moment, I started using my ultimate stalling tactics again. Saying all the right things. But my body just won't move. Even if you say my legs are numb, don't help me. If I move now, I'll be paralyzed. That guy was completely defeated. This cunning guy, understood that I was just playing him. I wasn't going to help at all. Then the furious man left. Then I grinned. Slowly standing up. You still want to harm me? There isn't even a window. Meanwhile, the chosen ones in other countries were facing the same choice. At this time, Park from Kimchi country was struggling, desperately, faced with 2 conflicting rules, Rule 14 and Rule 17, he didn't know what to do. But the passengers didn't care. Seeing Park Woo-ri still hesitating, the passengers started urging him more impatiently. Faced with their urging, Park Woo-ri finally lost his patience. In a moment of rashness, he said he wouldn't go. The passenger's urging stopped abruptly. I looked up. The passenger's face had become bizarre and terrifying. He smirked. I've been waiting for you to say that. You've broken the rules. Then let me stay here forever. Saying this, he lunged at Piao Wu-li, instantly licking him. And this passenger is the one who picked up the passenger's rulebook from his superior. No one expected Park Woo-li to be tricked by a passenger. Then the system prompt sounded again. South Korea's chosen one, Park Woo-li, is being consumed by the uncanny. The strange tale world is about to arrive. Countdown begins. Back to my side. After that passenger left, seeing that the dog hadn't arrived yet, I lay down to rest. But I hadn't slept long. When I heard the familiar sound of chewing, I got up with a smile on my face. This time I had to make sure if you were that Teddy. Then I picked up my flashlight and shone it over. The light came on, and there was that silly Teddy, gobbling down potato chips. But this time, he didn't rush to attack me. Maybe he knew there was a doll nearby. He didn't want to waste his energy. I bravely walked over. I intended to carefully observe what this little teddy bear was. But as soon as I got close, I heard the system sound. Congratulations. The chosen one has gained the initial recognition of the Black General. Continuing to feed it will increase the Black General's loyalty. Once your loyalty reaches a certain level, you'll have a chance to gain the Black General's following. But the Black General, once obtained, cannot be taken outside the carriage or the train. Hearing that, I felt slightly surprised. This little teddy has such a majestic name, looks like another good helper. In the rules of weirdness world, I've acquired another strange creature as a pet. All because this strange creature is a gluttonous little teddy. It all happened just now. Upon receiving the system prompt, I immediately realized I needed to get more snacks. After all, this little teddy named Black General is a special existence that can fight 100 rounds against the puppets without losing. As long as I gain his loyalty, then this train to the far-off lands instance will most likely be stable. But the snack vendor was already nowhere to be found. It seems I'll have to use some special methods. Then I walked to the train car corridor and shouted, "Wake up, everyone. Hand over all your snacks within 3 minutes. Otherwise, don't blame me for releasing the puppets." A crowd of passengers were thus awakened from their sleep by my loud shout in the dead of night. All of them were completely bewildered, but they quickly came to their senses. Hearing that I was going to release the puppets, they knew they couldn't afford to offend me. They vied with each other to offer their snacks. Before long, a large pile of snacks had accumulated into a small mountain. Seeing the passengers cooperate so well, I'm also very happy. I generously decided not to release the doll yet. Then I called over little Teddy, whose eyes were shining brightly, and let him enjoy it slowly. Little Teddy didn't stand on ceremony. After a whirlwind of eating, the food was completely devoured. The system prompt sounded again. "Congratulations. Chosen one, you have gained Black General's approval. Black General considers you a reliable person. Therefore, he has decided to temporarily follow you." I succeeded. I listened to the prompt with excitement on my face. I thought I would have to feed it several more times, but I succeeded on the first try. I touched He Juanzhang's head, overjoyed. I really got a great bargain. The online audience watching the live stream outside also went crazy. My God, isn't Big Ivan invincible now? He can subdue the strange creature just by feeding it snacks. How come he always gets all the good things? With He Juanzhang's protection, I slept soundly with peace of mind. But on the third morning, just as dawn broke, I was woken by He Juanzhang's running. I got up and saw that he was running frantically in circles around the carriage. I was completely bewildered, not knowing what he wanted to express. Seeing me awake, He Juanzhang quickly ran towards the connection between the carriages, and barked frantically. I realized he was reminding me. I looked up. I instantly broke out in a cold sweat. I was supposed to be in car 6, but the car I was in was clearly number 8. When I first entered the instance, the instructions emphasized that the attendants should remember their car numbers. I didn't expect this to be useful. There wasn't a single useless sentence in the rule prompt. Then I heard a system prompt. "Selected ones, I believe you've noticed that the number of your carriage has changed. Now you have 2 choices. One is to stay put. The other is to go through the fog in the carriage connection and return to your original carriage." My brows furrowed. I was hesitant at that moment, because this is no longer just about judging the rightness or wrongness of the rules, but also about judging the correctness of the system's prompts. My talent isn't as effective when faced with these judgments. But Nikolai from Grizzly Country used his S-class leadership talent to obtain hidden information from the passengers, so he didn't hesitate to enter the fog, intending to return to his compartment. And what choice should I make? General Hay's little Teddy strikes again. I perfectly cleared the train to the distant lands instance. It turns out it was just now, when faced with the system's prompt to identify the train car. I still chose the second one, because the attendant's manual emphasized from the beginning that attendants must remember their own car number. The attendant's manual wouldn't have written that for no reason, and the vendor pushing the cart earlier left from the connection between the cars. So I think those mists are most likely just a scare tactic. The second option is the correct one. Having thought it through, I no longer hesitated. I strode towards the mist. Meanwhile, the other chosen ones also made their choices. Kivis, the football player chosen one who had always been low-key, unexpectedly revealed his guide talent at this moment. And this talent is also very simple and brutal. That is, when faced with a difficult choice, it will directly point out the correct path to the chosen one. So he didn't hesitate to choose to return to his own carriage. Besides him, there's Pasha, the little brother from Pakistan, who received a tip from higher-ups at the crucial moment, telling him to follow my choice. So he didn't hesitate either. So, among all the chosen ones, except for me, Nikolai from Grizzly Country, Kivis from the Football Nation, and Pasha from the Iron Nation, 4 of us, the remaining chosen ones from other countries chose to stay put. Some were too scared to cross the fog, while others were because their national leaders were busy dealing with the aftermath of the last strange event, unable to give them any guidance. This led them to make the wrong decision. Soon after, the system prompt sounded, announcing the end of the selection period. All the chosen ones who chose to go through the fog survived. All the chosen ones who chose to stay were eliminated. Then, those who remained were instantly enveloped by darkness. The cold system prompt sounded again. Chosen ones from Japan and 5 other countries were mysteriously devoured. The ghost story world is about to arrive. Countdown begins. By this time, I had successfully returned to my original carriage number 06. Although I chose correctly this time, I know the challenge is Not over yet, because there's one last rule before me. Rule 15, the connection between carriages will open each time participants are released. When it opens, other passengers may take the opportunity to sneak in. If I find a passenger who doesn't belong in this carriage, I must make them leave. Looking at the passengers' meal boxes, the dining car must have already passed through. That means, while I was away from the carriage, someone who didn't belong in this carriage snuck in. But there are over 40 passengers in this carriage. If this person is disguised like the other passengers, how am I supposed to tell? Just as I was racking my brain, the outside world, inside the Longwa conference room, also anxiously discussed the situation. They immediately thought about whether they could allow passengers in each compartment to identify each other. Then they immediately wanted to send me a message. But when they finished editing the message and wanted to send it, the system prompted that messages could not be sent at this stage. It required the selected person to complete it independently. Wasn't this blatant cheating? Could it be that the world of strange tales has started targeting me? But at that moment, I didn't know any of this. Instead, I turned to look at the little teddy, whose eyes were shining brightly. As a high-level mysterious being, the Black General, identifying a small Karami wasn't difficult at all. Then I let the dog loose. I saw the Black General, after circling once, suddenly bared its teeth and pounced on a passenger. The passenger was completely powerless to resist. He was chased by the Black General, tumbling and crawling towards the connecting passage. As the passenger left the carriage, a prompt sounded. The chosen one, thank you for your contribution to Carriage 06. In Carriage 06, you educated the aggressive bear parents, and helped the incorrigible bear child reform. You have gained the Black General's following. Congratulations on your perfect game completion. The train departs for the distant lands. Game completion evaluation, completion. Reward, Black General's Eerie Resistance +1, current Eerie Resistance, 2%. Black General introduction. He has been waiting here for a master to take him away. He is very loyal, but at the same time, he eats a lot. If one day you wake up and find Black General isn't by your side, don't worry, he's just hungry. I looked at Black General with surprise on my face. The reward for clearing the level was actually him. That means in the next instance, I'll start with Black General and the puppet as my two great protectors. I entered the strange world again, and this time, the strange tale was called Zoo. Having finally expelled the external passengers, I cleared the game and boarded the train heading for the distant future. And I gained the allegiance of the Black General. Meanwhile, Nikolai from Grizzly Nation and Kevis from Football Nation also obtained the final passenger information through their own talents and successfully cleared the game. But Pakistan's par was ultimately eliminated. Luckily, Pakistan had already obtained chip technology from Dragon Nation. Otherwise, the arrival of the Strange Tale world would certainly have been another huge disaster. By this time, I had already been transported back to the external world. Since the arrival of the rule-breaking Strange Tales, I'm the only one who has completed the game twice. My rarity is almost comparable to that of a giant panda. So, as soon as I returned, I was immediately protected by the mobilized troops of the Dragon Nation. These past few days, I've also recorded all the strange data. I've submitted it to the country to be sealed as top-secret archives for 3 days. Once the time is up, I will be transported to a new instance again. I looked around. Is this a zoo? Then I saw a staff member in a blue uniform walking towards me. He handed me something like a map and said, "This is the zoo's layout map. Please keep it with you, in case you get lost." I took the map. I found that the zoo was very large. The map accurately marks the animal distribution. It's divided into 9 zones. The back of the map shows the rules to follow in this strange world. Rule 1, please visit the zoo politely. Do not feed or provoke the animals, avoid dangerous actions. Rule 2, if you see pink rabbits and blue elephants, don't be surprised. When an animal looks at you, you must ensure you face them head-on. Otherwise, they will attack you immediately. Rule 3, if you see staff chasing an animal, please help. It will appreciate it. Rule 4, the map markings are incorrect. Please do not trust the map. Rule 5, if you accidentally get lost in the zoo, please remain calm. You can rest on a bench in the zoo. But if it's night, you need to be careful of animals that might appear at any time. Rule 6, if you are hungry, you can get free food from the vending machine. Friendly reminder, if you don't want to vomit, please try to choose mutton. Rule 7, if necessary, you can ask for help from the park staff. Staff in blue and red uniforms will be happy to help you. But if it's a black uniform, run away immediately. Rule 8, the aquarium is a safe zone. Rule 9, there is no aquarium in the zoo. Always silently repeat to yourself, I am human. After carefully reading the park's guidebook, I found the rules for this event even more bizarre. The last rule even gave me goosebumps. And at that moment, the gate disappeared. Many tourists, just like me, appeared out of nowhere. But I'm sure they weren't the chosen ones. Since they weren't the chosen ones, then they must be something strange. Immediately, I summoned Black General. With Black General's protection, I was no longer nervous. I decided to check out the rabbit enclosure first. As soon as I arrived at the entrance, I saw staff members in blue uniforms handing out carrots to visitors. Undoubtedly, these carrots were for feeding the rabbits. But Rule 1 clearly stated, please visit the zoo civilly. Feeding, provoking, and other dangerous actions are prohibited. This seems to be the first rule the chosen ones have to face. But this kind of rule judgment is the easiest for me, because I only need to do the opposite of my instincts. So I picked up a carrot and leisurely started feeding. But the rabbits in the garden clearly wanted to eat, but they didn't dare to come close. Because Black General was right beside me, baring its teeth and glaring at them. I haven't seen any pink rabbits either. Could it be that the second rule is wrong? I also stopped wasting time calling out for the Black General, and decided to check out other areas. Meanwhile, Summit from the Indian Kingdom was teasing a rabbit with some carrots. But as a newcomer to the world of strange tales, he had no idea that danger was already closing in on him. At that very moment, a rabbit with blood-red eyes was staring directly at him. This rabbit leaped 10 meters high, and bit the man's neck. Simply because the man ignored the rabbit's gaze, and tried to leave alone. It turned out that just now, after Uncle Sans Sammy fed the rabbits, he turned around and tried to leave, completely forgetting the contents of the visitor guidelines. But the rules, however, clearly state that if you find a pink rabbit and a blue elephant, don't be surprised. When the animals look at you, you must make sure you are facing them directly. Otherwise, they will immediately attack you. Just like that, Sammy's rabbit went berserk as he was staring at it. The moment he turned around, the rabbit leaped up. It bit hard into Summit's neck. Summit was terrified. He struggled desperately to shake off the rabbit, but the rabbit was like it was rooted there, holding on tightly and refusing to let go. Summit could only shout for help loudly to those around him, until a worker in a blue uniform arrived. And only then was the rabbit removed from Summit's neck. Summit also lost his temper at this time. He covered his neck and started to yell at the staff. What kind of mess is this? How could a rabbit even jump out of the enclosure and bite someone? What are you staff doing? Can't you manage it? The staff could only bow their heads and apologize. They said it was a management oversight. They would deal with it immediately. Summit covered his wound, while still relentlessly arguing. But what he didn't know was, his eyes were starting to turn red. His pupils were becoming the same color as the rabbit from earlier. And the onlookers witnessing this scene, combining it with the last rule in the visitor's guide, were all predicting that he would soon turn into a rabbit. Meanwhile, I've arrived at the south side of the zoo, following the map's directions. But the map clearly indicates that there are zebras, tigers, and goats here. However, I've only found the zebra and tiger enclosures. I can't find the goat enclosure anywhere. Could it be, as the rulebook suggests, that the map is wrong? To confirm my suspicions, I'm going to head to the elephant enclosure to investigate. As soon as I arrived at the elephant enclosure, I was shocked by what I saw. The elephant's eyes were bloodshot, and their ears were standing straight up. These weren't elephants. They were clearly just giant rabbits. But the tourists nearby weren't surprised at all. It seemed to be perfectly normal to them. As I was staring at this group of strange elephants, thinking to myself, a normal elephant suddenly charged out from who knows where. But as soon as it appeared, it was immediately attacked by the other rabbit-like elephants. The outcome was predictable. 1 against a dozen. There was no chance of winning. And this normal elephant seemed to be assimilated as well. Its eyes slowly starting to turn red. Seeing this scene, I felt something was wrong. But I couldn't put my finger on it. But then, something even stranger happened. The elephants all turned into goats. They went crazy, frantically charging the fence. It felt like they were trying to knock down the surrounding tourists. The tourists finally realized something was wrong. Panic broke out. People scattered and fled. But soon, a group of staff in blue uniforms arrived. They shouted loudly, "Don't panic, everyone. The elephant is only temporarily acting out. Please follow us to the lion enclosure. It's safe there for now." I thought my words would be useless in such a noisy environment. The staff's words would have no effect at all. But unexpectedly, the tourists fell instantly silent after listening. It was as if everything before was just a formality. Why were these tourists so obedient? Didn't they have any suspicions? And why would the elephants riot and go to the lion enclosure? Didn't Shou Zeba say the oceanarium was the safe zone? I stared at this bizarre scene before me, a little at a loss. But I ultimately decided to follow and see what they were up to. He Junjiang struck again, this time confronting a rampaging lion. It turned out that just now, the elephant that had transformed into a goat suddenly went berserk. But the staff who came at the sound of the commotion led the tourists into the lion enclosure, saying that the lion enclosure was safe at this time. But according to the passenger rules, the oceanarium was the safe zone. I didn't have any good ideas either, so I decided to follow them and see what these staff were up to. Meanwhile, this bizarre zoo also had the outside world's onlookers buzzing. What's going on in this zoo? An elephant that looks like a rabbit has turned into a goat. I'm not dreaming, am I? Why are we going to the Crown Prince's garden? Those staff members, though they're wearing blue uniforms, don't seem like good people. And as everyone was whispering amongst themselves, a system prompt suddenly sounded. The unlucky Bablu, chosen one of the Nibelheim country, was mysteriously devoured. The world of strange tales is about to arrive. Countdown begins. So Bablu also encountered the elephant stampede, but he didn't escape the elephant's attack. Instead, he was trampled by a rampaging elephant. The outcome is predictable. Meanwhile, the chosen ones who escaped the elephant stampede are all like me. I was led into what was supposed to be a safe lion enclosure by the staff. Nikolai, the grizzly bear from Grizzly Country, was also there. But don't let his size fool you. He's actually quite shrewd. As soon as we entered the enclosure, he loudly questioned the staff about why the gate was locked. But before he could get an answer, he heard the lions roaring furiously. Nikolai looked back. The lions had already begun to attack. Some passengers had already fallen prey to the lions. Then he realized that the workers weren't there to protect them at all. They were meant to be lion food. Nikolai immediately climbed over the fence and escaped. He scaled even that high wire fence. I have to say, his physical condition is really good. As for me, I was facing the same situation. 2 lions with red eyes were already staring at me, but I wasn't the least bit worried, because I was holding Black General in my arms the whole time. Just as the 2 lions lunged at me, Black General decisively took action. No, to be precise, it should be a decisive strike. I saw him spit out several octopus-like tentacles from his mouth. In an instant, he entangled the 2 lions. Then, he swallowed them in one gulp. Look, I was stunned by this scene. It can swallow lions of this size. You're probably an extraterrestrial devouring beast. Meanwhile, Black General licked his lips with a mischievous grin. I still feel like I haven't had enough. Unlike previous times, this strange attack didn't black out my live stream. The higher-ups in Longwood judged that it was because I brought back a lot of data last time, leading the strange entity to believe there was no need to hide anymore, so it simply went public. They have high hopes for me. They hope I can continue on my journey, leading Longwood to escape the invasion of strange tales. The footage of facing the bizarre attacks is made public. Most countries are happy, because this way they can grasp more bizarre information, to prepare for the future arrival of strange tales. But some are unhappy. At this time, the high-ranking officials of Little Japan were angrily jumping and cursing about my incredible luck. I was able to obtain the help of 2 bizarre beings. High-ranking officials in the US watched my live stream with angry faces. They all blamed John, who had drawn an S-class talent last time, for being incompetent, allowing me to gradually surpass him. They declared that this time they would make every effort to ensure their chosen participant, Thomas, successfully completes the game. Back in the Ghost Story world, I was praising little Teddy. But when I turned my head, I noticed a tourist had actively climbed over the fence and escaped. I realized this person must be different. It actually escaped on its own. It's highly likely that it's carrying valuable clues. So I asked He Junjong if there was a way out. He Junjong didn't hesitate. He spat out a tentacle. The 2 heavy iron doors were instantly flung open. I have to say, this little guy is truly amazing. But I didn't have time to be surprised. I hurried after the tourist. I soon found him on a bench in the garden. He was trembling all over. He looked desperate. What else had he experienced? The seemingly normal elephant was actually the security guard. And the reason he charged at those monsters was simply to protect the tourist. It turned out that just now, I finally found the tourist who had escaped on a bench in the park. But I found him shivering. He seemed very scared and desperate. Just as I approached to find out what was going on, he pulled out a pen and paper from his clothes. He leaned on the bench and started writing. After writing for about 15 minutes, the tourist got up and left hurriedly. But he didn't take the note with him. He left it on the bench. The tourist's unusual behavior completely piqued my curiosity. I hurried forward, picked up the note, and read it. I knew I couldn't leave alive. The zoo appeared out of nowhere. He was luring us in. Entering this zoo was the worst decision I ever made. I got separated from my best friend. I can't find him anymore. I'm lost. There's no way out of this zoo. This zoo is creepy. They're all weird, twisted monsters. I saw with my own eyes the zookeeper turn into an elephant. He bravely charged towards those monsters. He wanted to protect us. But sadly, he failed. He was assimilated by the monsters. Seeing this, my heart felt complicated, because I had just witnessed this happen with my own eyes. So the elephant that suddenly charged out and was surrounded by more than 10 bizarre creatures was actually the security guard uncle. Then I continued watching. It says here, we are all contaminated. I'm terrified and desperate. I've been trapped in the zoo for over 3 days. I don't know what awaits me. If you find this note, I hope you'll follow the rules. May it lead you out of here. Remember to find the oceanarium as soon as possible. Perhaps he really exists. I stared at the note's contents, unable to calm down for a long time. This also confirmed my suspicions. All the tourists in the park were forced to stay. They've been corrupted by the strange phenomenon. They're trapped in an endless loop. And this note also confirms one thing. That's what the rules mentioned. The aquarium might really be a safe zone. Maybe even the exit. Which means Rule 9 might be wrong. But where exactly is this aquarium that even the staff doesn't know about? As I pondered the note, high-ranking officials from various countries in the outside world also realized the importance of the note. The high-ranking officials of Grizzly Bear Nation and Soccer Nation were the first to use their one and only hint opportunity. They notified their selected participants to quickly find the note left on the bench. Meanwhile, high-level officials in the ASEAN country conference room were distraught, because their country's chosen one, Summit, after being bitten by a rabbit, had developed mental issues. Now, even if they sent a prompt, he might not even see it. Meanwhile, a broadcast suddenly rang out over the zoo in the rule of the strange world. The time is now 4:35 p.m. Visitors who need to eat can go to designated stores to buy delicious meat products. A reminder that the zoo closes at 6 p.m. If there are still visitors remaining in the zoo at that time, we cannot guarantee their personal safety. I listened to the broadcast with a surprised expression. It's already 4:30 now. In order to avoid going hungry, I could only hurry to find where this so-called designated store is. While searching, I unexpectedly discovered a goat enclosure in the east part of the zoo, but there were no goats inside, and according to the map, this goat enclosure shouldn't even be here. Luckily, the shop was nearby, so I didn't think about it anymore, and quickly walked into the shop. The shop staff, also wearing blue uniforms, greeted me warmly upon my arrival, saying, "Hello, tourist. We provide 3 servings of mutton and drinks free of charge to tourists every day. Please go ahead and help yourself." Following the staff's directions, I easily found the mutton displayed on the shelves, but I remember a rule in the visitor's guide that says if you're hungry, you can get free food from the vending machines, but if you don't want to vomit, please try to choose mutton. Although, according to Rule 6, I shouldn't eat mutton. Only by defying the rules can I receive the Heavenly Father's protection. I really want to eat meat. There's no other meat here. Then I had a bright idea. As long as I don't take the free food from the vending machine, it wouldn't be considered fully following the rules. Theoretically, it wouldn't violate the principles of rebellion either. Speaking of which, I have to admire my own cleverness. So I took 3 servings of mutton and planned to have a feast. Just as I was about to get some drinks, I found that the cabinet was full of canned rabbit blood. I found it very strange, so I took a bottle and turned to ask the staff. But unexpectedly, the staff member, faced with my casual question, became noticeably flustered. Finally, staff members in black uniforms appeared at the zoo, and what clues will he bring? It turned out that just now, having taken 3 portions of mutton, I was about to get some drinks, when I discovered that the zoo shop's beverage section was filled with rabbit blood. I looked puzzled, so I picked up a bottle and turned to ask the staff. But the staff seemed visibly flustered. Then they quickly put away all the rabbit blood from the shelves. Watching the staff's strange actions, I had a bad feeling, so I didn't continue asking, but quickly walked out of the store. Meanwhile, other selected individuals from different countries also gradually found their shops. But unlike me, they chose to follow the instructions of Rule 6. He didn't enter the store. Instead, he chose to get food from a vending machine. Although there was rabbit blood in the vending machine, the vast majority of the chosen ones automatically ignored it. Only Summit, the chosen one from the Indian subcontinent who had been bitten by a rabbit, went into a frenzy after seeing it, and actually drank it down in one gulp. The result was predictable. The cold system prompt sounded instantly. Summit, the chosen one from Asangwa, was mysteriously devoured. The rule of Weird Tales world is about to arrive. Countdown begins. Back to my side. At this time, I was sorting through all the clues I had gathered today, based on the note left by the tourist, and combining it with the contents of the tourist handbook. I guessed that the zoo would gradually corrode one's will. The longer I stay at the zoo, the more confused my mind becomes, leading me to be assimilated by the strange animals. This usually happens around 3 days. But I've explored the entire zoo today, yet I still haven't found the exit. There's also no trace of the oceanarium mentioned in the note and the manual. This makes me realize that the difficulty of the strange tale world is gradually increasing. The zoo's strangeness far surpassed my mother's note and the train heading to the distance. After thinking hard for a long time, I still had no clue. So I decided to find a place to rest first. But I didn't follow Xiaozu's suggestion. I didn't choose to spend the night on a bench in the zoo. Instead, I went back to the shop. By this time, the shop staff had disappeared. I randomly found a few cardboard boxes, laid them on the ground, and lay down. I took out the doll and placed it beside me. I was about to take a good rest. But just then, a sound of footsteps startled me awake. I quietly walked over and hid by the wall to see. I found that it was a staff member wearing a black uniform holding something on the shelves. This was the first time I had seen a staff member in black all day. According to the probationary period guidelines, if I encounter staff in black uniforms, I should leave immediately. According to my talent's requirements, I should do the opposite. So, after seeing this person take several pieces of mutton and quickly leave, I hurried after him. But when I had chased him a short distance, I found that he suddenly turned into a small alley. I was stunned, because I clearly remember there was no road here during the day. But I can't worry about that now. After I recovered, I still quickly followed. But when I also turned that corner, I found that this road was a dead end, and the staff member who had just entered the alley disappeared without a trace. Only a note was left behind. I finally found the aquarium, but is this really the zoo's exit? It was just now. I disobeyed Rule 5's instructions. I didn't choose to spend the night on a zoo bench. Instead, I chose to return to that shop, but just as I placed the doll beside me, and was about to fall asleep, a worker in a black uniform slipped inside. Then I saw him grab some mutton and quickly leave. I realized something was wrong with him, so I hurried after him, but something strange happened. Not only did a path appear in the zoo that I'd never seen before during the day, but the man vanished into thin air in this dead end, leaving only a note behind. To prevent a strange midnight attack, I quickly grabbed the note and returned to the store. But just as I returned to the store and was about to check the note's contents, a system announcement suddenly echoed across the globe. 6 countries, including Beijing and others, had been selected. Those selected were swallowed by the strange. Rule of the strange. The world is about to descend. Countdown begins. It turns out that the rule of staying put was the correct one. Those who were chosen were those who chose to rest on the bench, but didn't pay attention to their surroundings, leading to their being devoured by the suddenly appearing strange animals. But besides me, there was one other person who chose to sleep in a store. That was Thomas from the USA. It turns out that high-ranking officials in the US used their precious tip-off opportunity in advance to inform Thomas, so he also obtained this crucial note from the store staff. Back to me. I opened the note. It read, "I got lost while chasing a group of rabbits. When I came to my senses, I couldn't find my friends. I had no choice but to ask the staff for help, but the staff ignored my helplessness. Rabbits are apes. Elephants are rabbits. The first 4 white lions are apes. The 5th white lion is a goat. The zoo protects normal people during the day. The aquarium protects mildly polluted people at night. Please firmly believe you are a human being." At that moment, I realized, this person was probably the friend of the tourist from earlier. But he's also a tourist. Why is he wearing a black zoo uniform? Did he change clothes at the aquarium? Could this mean the aquarium is actually a safe zone? Or even an exit from the zoo? Then the road that appeared out of nowhere last night was probably a path leading to the aquarium. Having cleared my head, I didn't go anywhere the next day. I just waited by the roadside, and I waited until evening. But just then, a group of strange animals suddenly charged towards me. Behind them, staff members shouted for me to stop them. But because of the rebellious rules, I definitely wasn't going to stop them. Then, he casually turned around. What was lost stood to one side. Meanwhile, others also faced this choice. But most of those selected, after weighing the pros and cons, still chose to abide by the tourist code. Righteously, they helped the staff. But what they didn't know was, they had already been targeted by a rabbit monster lurking in the shadows. Late at night, they were attacked by this group of rabbit monsters. The result was, without a doubt, their brutal elimination. And their country faced the arrival of the monster world. Meanwhile, I finally waited for that road to reappear. I immediately and quickly walked along the road. But besides me, 2 other people also found this path. One was Thomas, who also received the note. And the other was Nikolai, who was wandering around in the middle of the night. I have to say, this guy's luck is unbelievable. He stumbled upon the path leading to the oceanarium. By this time, I had already arrived at the oceanarium. Upon entering the park, I immediately noticed a notice board at the entrance. The notice board clearly listed several rules. Oceanarium Visitor Code of Conduct. Rule 1. The oceanarium has a separate jellyfish zone rest area, where visitors can rest. Food is provided free of charge here. You may help yourself. Do not consume mutton, even if you see this kind of food on the shelves. Rule 2. There's only one way to the oceanarium. Once you enter the oceanarium, you cannot stay in the oceanarium for more than 3 days, and you must stay for at least 1 day. Rule 3. This is the oceanarium. Only marine life exists here. If you see elephants swimming in the whale enclosure, please don't get excited. It's just a fun 3D projection. Just pretend it's a whale. Rule 4. There's no one in the aquarium. You can pick up a black uniform at the entrance and put it on. This is the only way to send a signal to the staff for rescue. This is the only way to signal for help. Rule 5. Aquarium staff all wear red uniforms. They clean the aquarium every night at 12 o'clock. You can talk to him, but you can't mention anything about the zoo. Rule 6. The aquarium is independent. There's no zoo outside. Rule 7. After the staff clean the aquarium, they leave at 6 a.m. During this time, you can't leave the aquarium. Violation of Rule 8, above. Safety issues, consequences are your own. Another 20+ seconds underwater. Those who can happily watch to the end are true fans. See you tomorrow. I found the aquarium, but I seem to have amnesia. I forgot whether I'm human or animal. It was just now that I finally arrived at the aquarium. Looking at this long list of rules, I realized I'd entered a whole new environment, but I didn't put on the black uniform next to me. Because judging from the staff member wearing a black uniform earlier, rule number 4 is most likely correct. If I want to receive the continued protection of the gift, I definitely had to break that rule, so I went straight into the aquarium. The whole place was empty, not a single staff member. I just arrived at the goldfish area. When I saw it through the huge transparent glass, the so-called elephant swimming. According to Rule 3's instructions, if you see an elephant swimming in the whale area, please don't get excited. It's just a fun 3D projection. But I clearly feel, this is clearly not a projection, but a real elephant that drowned. Seeing this scene, I also realized, this aquarium isn't as safe as I imagined, but it was just as strange as outside. Everything felt eerie. I didn't wander to other areas. Instead, I carefully found the jellyfish area. The jellyfish area was indeed as Jose said. It provided visitors with a special resting room for jellyfish. I watched these jellyfish. I felt inexplicably relaxed. My previous tension disappeared. Could the notes mention of this place protecting mildly contaminated people refer to these jellyfish? I felt a calming influence from the jellyfish. My expression grew more relaxed. Soon, I yawned. I felt incredibly sleepy. Then I released the doll and Black General. I slept soundly, but I don't know how long I slept. Until He Junjiang's loud call woke me up. I looked at He Junjiang with a puzzled look, because I didn't know where he had fetched 2 notebooks from. I stepped forward and took them. I found that they said I was a zookeeper. Since I started working here, I have the same dream every night. A bizarre yet incredibly realistic dream. I froze. A zoo? What zoo? My unusual reaction shocked the Dragon Nation viewers watching the live stream. Realizing I might have amnesia, they started to worry. I looked at all this stuff in my notes, thinking that if I presented it all, it would probably take over 40 seconds. That would likely get me cut off. So I'll summarize. Basically, the content is about this person who dreamt they became the drowned elephant. And those staff members also have to follow many strange rules, like telling tourists that the zoo doesn't have a marine park. Those who disobeyed vanished without a trace. But strangely, the number of animals kept increasing. A final reminder, remember always, you are human, not an animal. That's all the content of this diary. And the last sentence seems not written for others, but a warning to himself. But the zoo is mentioned throughout, especially the last sentence. Though it sounds familiar, I can't recall it at all. This made me realize that I might have unconsciously forgotten something. So I found a pen in the room and wrote down the sentence, I am a human, not an animal, on my arm, to prevent forgetting again. Then I opened the second notebook. I found it was filled with a lot of stuff again. I'll only mention a few useful pieces of information. Those who want to read more can pause. The jellyfish in the jellyfish lounge can heal people with mild pollution, but at the same time, it will unknowingly erase part of your memory. The zoo exists, but the path to the aquarium only appears at specific times, and for a very short time. Perhaps you've already lost your memory of the zoo, but it doesn't matter. As long as you successfully enter the aquarium, the zoo won't be so important anymore. The jellyfish in the room will make you feel drowsy, but you can't sleep tonight. No matter what method you use, you must stay alert at all times. There's a whole lot more to come. More on that next time. Although I don't know what will happen after I fall asleep tonight. But since this diary specifically reminded me, I turned to the doll and the Black General and instructed them, if you see me showing signs of drowsiness, no matter what method you use, wake me up immediately. The Black General, Little Teddy, not only can block the initial talent of the chosen ones, but also can curse. It turned out that just after reminding the puppet and the Black General, I looked at the notebook again, and found there was another page. Always remember that you are a human, not an animal. Around 12 midnight, the aquarium staff will enter the jellyfish resting room. To turn off the jellyfish nightlights, you need to pretend to be asleep during this time. At 5 a.m. the next day, the staff will enter the jellyfish resting room again. If you're still awake then, please chat with him. It's best to talk about topics like zoos. The exit is at the oceanarium. 5:30 a.m. The oceanarium staff will go home and follow him. Congratulations, you may have already found your way home. That's the end of the notes content. I realize this is the only way to clear the game. To prevent forgetting due to jellyfish interference, I quickly wrote down the important parts of my notes on my arm. Meanwhile, Nikolai from Grizzly Country, under the jellyfish's mental soothing, also lost his memories about the zoo, but stumbled upon the notebook. He probably used up all his luck for several lifetimes, but he thought the notebook was enough. So he didn't record the important content. Instead, he directly put away the notebook. But what he didn't know was, this would be the worst decision he ever made. Now, let's look at Thomas in the US. He also found 2 notebooks, but the contents were different from ours. One was a marine park employee's notes, and the other was surprisingly the zoo director's. Opening the staff notebook, I saw it said I'm an aquarium staff member. I usually work the night shift. I usually enter the aquarium to work around 12 a.m. and leave around 5:30 a.m. Actually, the aquarium's exact working hours are from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. The reason I'm late and leave early is because the aquarium has a clear regulation. The aquarium doesn't allow early arrivals or overtime. As an employee of the aquarium, I must abide by the rules. I must always remember that the aquarium is an independent entity. This isn't a zoo. I have my doubts about the aquarium's regulations, But I've heard that employees who don't follow them completely disappear within the aquarium. At first, I thought it was just a scare tactic. Until that day, I saw the drowned elephant in the whale zone. No matter how the tourists asked, I had to insist that I didn't know about the zoo's existence. I knew they would soon forget about the zoo, too. Because the jellyfish here would make them forget that part of their memory. Once, a tourist stumbled upon this place. He asked me about the zoo. I vehemently denied knowing anything about it. He quickly lost interest. After the tourist fell asleep, I switched off his jellyfish nightlight by the bed, as per regulations. But the next day, while I was at work, I suddenly discovered that the tourist had disappeared. I don't know whether he had an accident or left the aquarium. Anyway, after that, I haven't seen him at the aquarium again. And seeing this, I believe everyone can clearly connect all the details of the whole incident. The tourist who escaped from the aquarium was the one who left the note at the zoo. But this made Thomas very distraught, because the note didn't record what he wanted at all. He talked a lot about escaping but didn't mention a single detail about how. Then Thomas quickly flipped open the director's notes. I am the zoo director. I regret taking this job as zoo director every single moment. Not long after I started working at the zoo, I noticed something strange about this place. First, visitors started disappearing without a trace. Then my employees began quitting without explanation. I don't understand why the employees left without a word. They seemed so happy working at the zoo, and even if they resigned, they should have submitted a resignation letter. But there wasn't one. They just left without a trace. As the director, I must ensure the smooth operation of the zoo and aquarium. My job is incredibly demanding. When supervising the employees' work, I often see them chasing rabbits. Although I don't know how the rabbits escaped, the employees would drive the rabbits into the lion enclosure, and the lions would directly attack these rabbits. Although this seems cruel, the zookeeper's rules tell me it's perfectly normal. I often work late into the night, but every night, I always hear children giggling and playing in the zoo. Those sounds are very frequent. I realize I might be hallucinating, because it's coming from the rabbit enclosure. I discovered the zoo's secret. I can't leave the zoo. It's restricting my freedom. Anyone who enters this zoo will not leave alive. That includes you, should you unfortunately stumble into this zoo. You must remember these 3 points. 1. It is constantly influencing you. 2. Do not try to figure out what it is. 3. Do not let it assimilate you. Always remember you are human, not an animal. The notes end here. There is no record of the director's whereabouts. There's no record of an escape method either. Thomas was extremely dejected. These 2 notebooks answered all his questions about the entire level, but they didn't provide the final escape method. It was like a last-minute goal, about to score, only to be suddenly penalized by the referee. But he quickly adjusted his state, because he still had unused talents. His gift is called the thief. He can steal a piece of useful information from any other chosen one. No doubt, his chosen target is definitely me. As the gift was used, the information on the note gradually revealed itself. But just as Thomas waited anxiously, a shocking scene appeared. It said, "Get lost, you loser," on it. What do you want? Eat shit. Thomas finally lost it. He spat out a mouthful of blood in anger. He instantly crumpled the note and threw it on the ground. But I knew nothing about it. Only He Junjiang beside me was winking at me with a mischievous smile. I successfully found a way to leave the aquarium, but it came at the cost of a bite wound on my arm. It was just that I was completely satisfied after eating the mutton. But not long after, a wave of drowsiness washed over me. Just as I was about to fall asleep, the puppet and the black general completely carried out my instructions. One pulled my hair, one bit my arm. It instantly brought me back to my senses. But they really did go all out. Looking at my bloody arm, even the citizens of Longwa in the outside world felt sorry for me, but I didn't care at all. Instead, I praised Black General and the others for doing a good job, because although the jellyfish's mental comfort can relax people, but it also seemed to have a hypnotic effect, making one fall asleep unknowingly. If I fell asleep at that moment, I'm afraid it wouldn't be as simple as waking up. The first half of the night passed in this repetitive stimulation. 12 a.m. I lay in bed feigning sleep, because according to the note's instructions, staff will be here soon. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, a staff member quietly walked in. He skillfully took the laptop, turned off the jellyfish night light, and quietly left. Luckily, I recorded the important information on my arm, so it didn't affect me much. I double-checked the information. According to the records, the staff won't be back in the break room until 5 a.m. So, I just need to stay awake until 5:30 a.m., wait for the staff to return to the break room, and then follow them out of here. Meanwhile, things aren't so easy for Wickham and Nicola, because after he pretended to be asleep and waited for the staff to leave, he found that the notes on the table had vanished. He realized that it was likely the staff who had taken the notes away, and he only then remembered to record the useful information elsewhere with a pen. But just as he picked up the pen and paper, he couldn't remember what he was supposed to do with them. The jellyfish's interference at midnight was becoming increasingly severe. His memories were rapidly fading. Nikolai, subsequently remembering nothing, felt overwhelmingly sleepy. His eyelids heavy, he decided to take a nap. He would deal with anything else tomorrow. And so, Nikolai soon fell into a deep sleep, completely forgetting the warning not to sleep. He threw away a winning hand. Meanwhile, in the US, Thomas, due to the notes he found being different from ours. So I didn't find a way to leave. And I fell asleep under the jellyfish's hypnosis. Only I, accompanied by the puppet and the black general, wearily persevered until 5:30 a.m. And at that moment, the staff arrived on time to clean the break room. Seeing that I was awake, he was very surprised. I even felt a hint of fear. Perhaps, in the staff's rulebook, tourists are simply troublemakers. This staff member didn't speak to me. He was trying his best to avoid me, but I wouldn't give him the chance. Not speaking to you. Does that mean I waited all night for nothing? My arms are still bleeding, not to mention, my hair is almost bald from all the vomiting. So I spoke first. The zoo, it actually exists, right? And you can really go home after work, right? But the staff member looked completely bewildered. He didn't know what I was talking about, but he could sense that I was different from the others. So he hastily cleaned up and then ran out in a panic. I realized this might be my only chance to successfully complete the game. So I quickly followed him with the dolls. I finally escaped the zoo, and successfully completed the game. And the reward this time was a jellyfish pendant. It turns out that just now, I, who hadn't slept all night, finally waited for the staff at 5:30 a.m. As he panicked and ran away, he found a large door that led out of the aquarium, and so I pushed it open and left. The level completion prompt finally sounded. Congratulations, Chosen One, you have successfully escaped the aquarium. Your reward for this level is a jellyfish pendant. It will soothe your mind and emotions, and prevent you from losing yourself. The prompt tone had just finished. Then I saw a glittering jellyfish-shaped pendant falling from the sky. I quickly caught it. This is an artifact. My talent allows me to avoid physical contamination by the uncanny, and this newly acquired pendant prevents mental influence by the uncanny. Plus, Black General and the Puppet, my two great protectors. The script I've gotten is practically a wish fulfillment novel. My mom no longer has to worry about me encountering strange things. And with my 5-star victory, Dragon Nation received a huge reward. Not only did it avoid the arrival of the rule-breaking Strange Tales, but the disease rate among Dragon Nation's citizens also decreased by 20%. This means that many elderly men who had been paralyzed for years can now run on walls. Weightlifting and bodybuilding are a piece of cake. The Dragon Nation's high-ranking officials saw me clear the game again. They treated me like a treasure. Not only did they arrange for top experts to treat me, they also personally welcomed my return. But at the same time, the high-level meeting rooms of Grizzly Country and the United States weren't so happy. Nikolai of Grizzly Country unfortunately lost due to a lack of attention to detail, but their high-level officials were powerless, because their only chance to give a hint had already been used. Then they decided to establish friendly international relations with Longwa at all costs, hoping to avoid this kind of situation in the next Strange Talk incident. And the meeting room in the US must be full of crap. That little mustache man basically never says anything good whenever he appears. I won't make it up for you guys. To avoid being called stupid again. 3 days later, I was once again sent into the Rule's Strange Talk world. This time, the Strange Talk was called Daoyuoshan. There's a ton of information. You guys can check the clearance time yourselves. It's 3 days. The external world's hint opportunity remains 1. And South Korea and Japan, who weren't selected in the last Strange Tale, have been selected again in this one. Just as I was thinking about what name I should give the selected participants from those two countries, Dala Mountains rules appeared. But this time, the sign showed the number of Dala Mountains mountaineering tourists. That means there might still be coins. The image font's curve is not good. If I let you look at the screenshots yourselves, your 2.0 vision would have to become 1.5, and you can't read the must-read parts. So I'm just saying I can only show you this way. I've also thoughtfully added BGM for you. Quickly give it a like. After reading the manual, I decided to head up the mountain to see. I was looking for any other useful information, but after walking for a long time, I found a sign that said I had only gone 100 meters. The total length of this mountain trail is 10,000 meters. I was completely defeated. This is ridiculous. At this rate, I've only gone 100 meters after walking for so long. I realized something was clearly wrong. So I planned to calculate it myself based on the number of steps, and also conveniently violate the suggestion of Rule 2. Increase some talent protection, but I hadn't walked 2 steps, when I heard someone behind me shouting, 10,000. 10,000. Like calling a soul back. It made my hair stand on end, but according to the suggestion of Rule 1, if you hear someone calling you from behind, you must never turn around. But I just have to. If someone calls you and you don't turn around, isn't that rude? I absolutely have to turn around and see who's calling so creepily. But the moment I turned around, the calling stopped abruptly, and there was no one behind me. But at that moment, I realized something was wrong. How could there be no one? Where had all the tourists who were with me just now gone? So I quickly summoned He Junjong. I instructed him that if He saw anything trying to approach me, no matter what it was. Bite directly. Sealed for 2 years. In the vending machine at Daleshan, which has been closed to tourism, there is unexpectedly fresh food. Who is this for? It turns out, just now, after summoning the Black General, I had no more concerns. I quickly walked up the mountain. And on this path, I did not hear that strange sound again. After I climbed breathlessly for over an hour, I finally found a new signpost 800 meters up the mountain path, but the finish line was still a long way off. I was both thirsty and hungry. Luckily, I found a vending machine in the open space ahead, so I decided to go check if there was any unexpired food I could grab a bite of. Unexpectedly, upon opening it, I found that there was not only fresh food inside, but even the souvenirs displayed next to it were brand new. It was clear that someone had just placed them there recently. I suddenly realized something was wrong. Daluoshan Mountain has been closed for 2 years. Tourism has long been prohibited. How could there still be staff regularly placing food there? And I clearly remember a clause in the visitor regulations that stated, along the route of Daluoshan Mountain, there are unmanned vending points. You can take souvenirs home, but absolutely do not eat the food from the vendor. That means the food might be problematic. But at this point, I have to do the opposite. After all, rebellion comes with a protective talent. Even if the food is problematic, it won't kill me. Mainly because I'm really hungry. But just as I finished a big meal and was about to set off again, the eerie call sounded again. Ivan. Ivan. It was really starting to annoy me. And this time, the sound was noticeably much closer. What puzzled me even more was that the usually sharp Black General, who's good at detecting strange things, couldn't hear it. Could this be what the ghost story hint was referring to? What he could be? What was it? But as I was pondering in confusion, a sudden wave of dizziness washed over me. The intense dizziness almost made me fall. Luckily, the jellyfish pendant on my chest emitted a dazzling light, promptly dispelling this eerie summons. Otherwise, my head would have likely cracked open. At this moment, I also realized that this so-called he was no good. The formidable Black General, even his voice was inaudible. This is likely a more terrifying, eerie presence. I absolutely cannot be careless. Then I continued forward. Finally, at the 1,500-meter mark, I discovered another signpost. This signpost, however, was different from the previous ones. Besides the distance marker, it also depicted a map of Mount Daluo. But what's puzzling is that the most important destination, Mount Daluo, isn't marked. Just as I was staring at the map, deep in thought, a few people suddenly appeared on the path beside me. According to the instructions from Xiao's Wu, all the villagers of the former Daluo village have already moved out. If you encounter any suspicious individuals claiming to be from the mainland village, do not engage in conversation. I need to leave quickly. Since the rules say so, then I definitely have to continue rebelling. At least I'll go up there and chat for 50 cents. Go through the motions. These people clearly looked panicked when they saw me. They quickened their pace, seemingly wanting to leave. But I won't give them the chance. But after chatting with them, I discovered that this group of people, who claimed to be villagers from Daluo village, had actually formed their own patrol team. They regularly patrol the mountain. I paused slightly before asking a question. Since you're a patrol team, why do you only use the small paths, and not the mountain trail? The first female chosen one to arrive in the rules of the strange world was Hashiana Fukuro from Japan. It was just now, while I was studying the map, I encountered 2 people who claimed to be from the patrol team, but according to the rule hints, it's highly likely that these 2 were imposters. So I questioned them about why they only took the small paths, instead of the mountain trail. They were very flustered by my questions. After I stammered something about being used to taking shortcuts, he changed the subject. He told me that if I wanted to reach the summit quickly, I could only keep following the mountain path, and I absolutely had to go to the mountain god temple. I was taken aback, because I'd never heard of the mountain god temple before. It wasn't mentioned in the ghost story warnings or the visitor's guide, but as I was lost in thought, those 2 people, taking advantage of my inattention, hurriedly ran down the small path, and disappeared in a short while. Since there was no marker for the mountain god temple on the map, and these 2 villagers had been proceeding along the small path the whole time, I decided to follow their example, hoping for an unexpected discovery. I can also break the rules a little. Rule 4, don't stray from the mountain path. Add a little bit of divine protection. Besides me, the other chosen ones also encountered villagers one after another, but because of the rules warning, most people chose to flee. Only a small number of the chosen ones dared to pluck up their courage and chat with the villagers. And thus, I obtained information about the mountain god temple, but they didn't dare follow the villagers down the small path. In other words, I was the only one proceeding along the small path. Now I've encountered a new problem. After walking for a long time on the small path, I found myself back where I started. I clearly walked in a straight line. How could I have returned to the mountain trail? Where did those villagers go? It seems the small path is impassable. With a head full of questions, I could only continue along the mountain path again. Then, at the 2-kilometer mark, the sign appeared again. And this time, the sign had new rules. Daily mountain climbing tourist code B. Rule 6, the management has not set up. Don't approach any unauthorized sales points. If you find any unauthorized sales points, don't take anything from them, and please report it to the staff on duty immediately. Rule 7, if you see a gazebo while climbing the mountain, don't touch anything inside the gazebo. Rule 8, if you feel like you're being followed, or hear any unusual sounds, go to Longyin Pond to wash up immediately, but be sure not to drink the water from Longyin Pond. Rule 9, Cholangka Cave has always been a good resting place in Dalyuo Mountain. There you can seek help from the personnel on duty. Rule 10, don't trust anyone. But Rule 10 seems to have been added recently, because the original sign has obvious scratches. It looks like someone tampered with it. A more bizarre scene unfolded. While the other chosen ones were reviewing the rules, Park Gukchang, the chosen one from South Korea, suddenly clutched his head in pain. He felt like he was about to lose it. South Korea's higher-ups watched this scene, and instantly panicked. They had no choice but to urgently use their one and only hint, hoping the hint would snap Park Gukchang out of it. After all, Park Gukchang couldn't, unlike me, eliminate the mental influence with the jellyfish pendant. And with the prompt sound, Park Gukchang finally regained consciousness. But having returned to normal, he didn't look at the sign's contents again. Instead, he made a shocking move. He actually started walking back. He thought the dungeon only required exiting Darak Mountain within 3 days. But it didn't say anything about not being able to operate in reverse. So he still decided to leave through the exit. This scene also blew up the internet among the onlookers in the outside world. They flocked to Park Gukchang's live stream. This unique way of thinking. In old Lee's words, he's a real talent. But after Park Gukchang walked back for over half an hour, he still hadn't seen the roadside sign. Those around him, time and space seemed to have stopped. It was like constantly searching on a treadmill. The high-ranking officials of South Korea were completely speechless at this sight. They immediately notified the entire nation to prepare for the arrival of the strange phenomenon. Meanwhile, I had arrived 3 kilometers from Mount Daolok, and there, a gazebo appeared. Then, ignoring Rule 7's warning, I went inside. But just as I sat down to rest, the note appeared again. The note from Dalyuoshan repeatedly mentioned the Mountain God Temple. And what was the Mountain God Temple? It turned out that when I had just entered the pavilion, I found 2 notes left by someone. Upon opening them, I discovered that one was written by a member of the Dalyuokan patrol team. They are responsible for patrolling the area around the village and the Dalyuoshan Mountain Trail. But they also need to abide by the rules. The village rules clearly state that they are not allowed to have too much contact with others, especially tourists on the mountain path. They only need to tell tourists that they can reach the Mountain God Temple by following the mountain path. Only then did I understand why the 2 villagers I met earlier were so flustered. They only pointed out the Mountain God Temple and then left hurriedly. It turns out they are also subject to these rules. Let's continue. There's a lot of strange information written on it. Dalo village has a communal dining hall. All the villagers eat there. But every time, the dining hall makes 1 extra dish. But no one can eat this dish. Instead, it's provided to the Dalo Hotel. The water in the Longying pool is drinkable. We often use it to make functional drinks. The Mountain God Temple no longer exists. I looked at the note, completely baffled. The earlier parts were understandable, but what did the last few lines mean? Then I opened the second note, hoping to find some other useful information. But after opening it, I found the information on this one even more bizarre. And the final line, don't trust anyone. All the villagers' test papers. Or were there others? Although I was completely baffled after reading them, the repeated mention of the Continental Hotel and the Mountain God Temple in these 2 notes caught my attention. I realized that these 2 places might be the key to clearing the game. Meanwhile, Austin from the USA, Alan from the UK, Claude from France, Dijon from the 3 Barons, and some other small country selectees also entered the pavilion and received notes. But Kyodomadai from Japan was heavily influenced by his mental state, so I vaguely chose to stay away. I felt he probably wouldn't go far, and return to me. By this time, I had arrived at Longyin Pond. I found a staff member filling a water bottle. I went up to ask to borrow it, but unexpectedly, he wasn't very cooperative. He told me flusteredly that the water here wasn't drinkable, although Rule 8 also suggests this. But if it's undrinkable, what would this person do taking the water back? So I think Rule 8 is most likely wrong. I then snatched the staff's water bottle. Then, under the staff's bewildered gaze, I drank heartily. He certainly didn't expect to meet a weirdo like me. After drinking, I felt refreshed. I ignored the staff member's accusations. I only felt his influence completely disappear. Then I strode away. The staff member seemed to suddenly realize something. He looked at me with a puzzled expression. Then he bowed in a certain direction. The other chosen ones faced the same choice, but most followed the instructions of Rule 8. No one dared to directly drink the water from the Dragon's Roar Pond. They only used it for simple washing. Only a small number of people still had clear minds. After careful consideration, they drank the pond water. The Japanese, Kyodomaitai, was among the majority who didn't drink. Already mentally fragile, he couldn't resist its influence for long. He was then completely consumed amidst the cries of "Yami die." Although the Japanese High Command tried to use the prompt to destroy, but it was too late. At this time, Xiao Doma Dai could no longer hold on. He couldn't see any information at all. Then, a cold prompt sounded across the globe. Xiao Doma Dai was mysteriously swallowed. The world of strange tales descended upon Japan. It must be said that the upper echelons of Japan bear a great responsibility for this elimination. I kept thinking of saving the clues for later, but it ended up causing this girl to be the first one eliminated from Dalyuoshan. It's a bit of a pity. Meanwhile, I had arrived at the 6-kilometer mark of Dalyuoshan, but as soon as I got there, He Junjiang started barking incessantly. I realized he seemed to be warning me about something. I quickly turned my head to look, but I found that the Dalo Hotel, shrouded in a black mist, had appeared out of nowhere before me. A new change has appeared in the Dalo Mountain instance. Those lured into the Dalo Hotel receive a new mission. It turned out that just now, just when I arrived 6 kilometers from Dalo Mountain, Black General barked loudly. I knew he was reminding me of something. I suddenly turned around. I found a large, black fog-shrouded hotel appearing out of nowhere beside me. The hotel was filled with an eerie atmosphere. Whenever I looked at it, I could clearly feel my thoughts becoming muddled. It was as if some magical force was drawing me in. Luckily, the jellyfish pendant kept working, keeping me clear-headed. Otherwise, I might have unconsciously walked inside. Meanwhile, the other chosen ones weren't as lucky as I was. Without the jellyfish pendant to protect them, most were drawn to the mainland hotel, mentally disoriented, and walked inside. Even attempts by various countries in the outside world to use the prompt opportunity were ineffective. Only a small number of people followed the instructions of Rule 1, and never looked back. I only just escaped the alluring flames of the mainland hotel, and those chosen ones who were lured in, only regained their senses after entering the mainland hotel. Claude, from Paris, was one of them. After regaining consciousness, he also noticed something was wrong, but just as he was about to escape, he found a note appeared in his hand out of nowhere. If you are fortunate enough to enter the mainland hotel, and you want to escape from here, then you must execute the following plan. In the hotel, if you meet employees from other departments, tell them you're from the hotel security department. This is extremely important. Your mission is to investigate the hotel's internal situation. Don't let them discover your true identity. Find out how many people in the hotel are obeying him, and safely bring the intel to the mountain god temple. Claude, seeing this, looked shocked. What's going on? He had actually entered a completely new instance, and the contents of the note clearly instructed him to act as a spy in the Daluo Hotel. But according to the note, since it says to bring the intel to the mountain god temple, so, does that mean someone will be waiting for him at the mountain god temple? Could it be another chosen one? And if that's the case, the Dalyobin Hotel would most likely become a side quest-linked instance. He continued reading, his mind full of questions. Successfully placing the intelligence before the statue in the mountain god temple will grant you the mountain god's blessing. Otherwise, you will be targeted by him. At the hotel, you're not affected by him, but once you leave the hotel, you have to watch out for him. Before the mission is complete, don't try to escape the hotel, because no matter where you escape to, you will ultimately return here. You have no room for error. This mission is exceptionally difficult. During the mission, trust no one. The note ends here. After a moment's hesitation, Claude abandoned the idea of immediately fleeing the hotel, because even if he goes back, he's not guaranteed to clear the level. It just so happens that the talent he drew is very useful here, so he plans to stay and give it a try. When the high-ranking officials of Paris Nation saw this, they also realized that the situation wasn't as bad as they'd imagined. The hotel might also be one of the ways to clear the level. Then they decided to notify Dragon Nation. Although the two countries don't have a particularly friendly relationship in the real world, but it doesn't hinder cooperation in the world of ghost stories. And looking at the other chosen ones who were drawn in, they weren't as calm as Claude. As soon as they woke up, they wanted to escape the Continental Hotel. They completely ignored the extra note in their hands. But what they didn't know was, as soon as they made a move to escape, they had already been targeted by the hotel staff in the shadows. The ending is predictable. Before they even reached the door, they were swallowed by the strange phenomenon. The live stream went black instantly, but I didn't know any of this. Realizing the strangeness of the Dala Hotel, I didn't dare to stay a moment longer. I continued walking upwards. By this time, I had reached a point 8 kilometers from Mount Daluo. Following the instructions of Rule 9, Longko Cave has always been a good resting point on Daluo Mountain. There, you can seek help from the staff on duty, but following my rebellious principles, asking for help was absolutely out of the question. So, I resolutely chose to keep going. But about 20 minutes later, something surprising happened. I had somehow returned to the starting point. Reaching the 8 kilometers marker again, I realized he might be the one blocking my path. If that's the case, I'll enter the Dragon's Mouth Cave. Let's see what he's up to. The Dalo Mountain instance cannot be cleared solo, because within the Dragon's Mouth Cave, there's something even more terrifying than the Black General. So, just now, when I was stopped at the 8 kilometers mark and couldn't proceed, I decided to go to the Dragon's Mouth cave. Let's see what's so strange inside. Meanwhile, Austin from the US and Alan from the UK had already arrived at the cave entrance while I was taking a detour. The sign in front of the cave entrance was particularly eye-catching. It displayed new rules: Dragon Mouth Cave temporarily closed. To the families of the missing persons, the scenic area understands your anxiety. However, the scenic area's professionals have conducted a professional search of Dragon Mouth Cave. No missing tourists have been found. Please wait patiently for the investigation results. Do not cross the warning line/barrier tape and enter the cave unauthorized. For hikers on Mount Daluoshan, Regulation C, Regulation 11, please proceed to the end of the hiking trail. The staff will be waiting for you there. You can also get help from the staff. Regulation 12, the mountain god temple does not exist. Rule 13, his power is growing stronger. If you unfortunately encounter him, please do not resist. You cannot resist. Rule 14, he is the mountain god. Rule 15, trust no one. Austin, at this moment, looked at the rules by the cave entrance, somewhat bewildered. What exactly does trust no one, which appears multiple times in the rules, mean? The mountain god temple, mentioned many times before, didn't actually exist. As Austin pondered in confusion, suddenly a voice appeared out of nowhere, drawing him into the cave. He was momentarily stunned after hearing the voice, and actually walked towards the cave. Luckily, at the critical moment, his S-class talent, negative removal, took effect, cleared away the negative influence brought by the weirdness, and instantly restored him to his peak state. Successfully escaped the control of the weirdness. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Meanwhile, Alan from the United Kingdom also successfully avoided the lizards in the cave using his talent, because the weirdness detection talent he drew allowed him to sense the presence of nearby weirdness in advance. So after reading the rules, he immediately escaped. I didn't actually snatch the gallbladder at the cave entrance. I have to say, the talents these two people drew are both incredibly overpowered. Mom will never have to worry about people calling me a cheater again. Back to me. At this time, after reading the rules, I also heard the sounds coming from inside. Although I have the jellyfish pendant's protection, my mind won't be affected. But his frequent harassment annoyed me, so I decided to have Black General teach him a lesson. Then I saw Black General spitting out root-like tentacles from his mouth. In an instant, he uprooted a large, thick tree nearby. With a plop, he threw it into the hole. And with the loud collision coming from inside the hole, the eerie sounds in my ears actually disappeared. Did it solve the problem that easily? But I instantly dismissed that idea, because the large tree I had just thrown in quickly came crashing back at me. Luckily, I was quick. Otherwise, this comic would have ended right here. This also scared the Dragon Nation's high-ranking officials watching the live stream half to death. They all breathed a sigh of relief that I had used magic to test it beforehand. Otherwise, if I had gone in directly, it would have been difficult to escape. At this moment, they also realized how powerful I was. I thought that relying on Black General alone wouldn't be enough, so I started considering Paris's proposal. I planned to cooperate with Claude, who was undercover at the Continental Hotel. Meanwhile, Claude, at the Continental Hotel, had already begun to act. Dalo Mountain has been closed for a long time. There are no tourists at all, but entertainment. But the department didn't disband. Something's fishy. So he decided to investigate from here, to see if he could find any useful information. But as soon as he entered, two staff members stared at him intently. The two men's strange expressions were completely unconcealed. Just looking at them made him nervous. How would Claude handle this situation? The secrets of Mount Dalo are gradually being revealed, and the mountain god temple may not be the end. It turns out that just now, when facing the suspicious scrutiny of the strange staff at the Dalo Hotel, Claude urgently used his talent, superb acting. This made the other party completely believe his actions. He fooled them. This is why Claude chose to stay at the Dalo Hotel, his reliance. With this talent, it seems gathering information is no problem for him. Meanwhile, I had arrived at a point 9 kilometers from Mount Daluoshan. Just looking at the sign, I fell into deep thought. According to the requirements of the Tourist Code of Conduct, Rule 11, you must go to the end of the mountain trail. Rule 12, the mountain god temple, does not exist. If I were to break both rules simultaneously to gain the protection of the talent, then I would only have one path left to choose. That is to go to the mountain god temple. And as I was making my choice, Austin from the US and Alan from the UK also made their choices in succession. Alan chose to continue to the finish line. Austin, like me, planned to go to the mountain god temple. 10 minutes later, Alan quickly arrived at the 9,600-meter mark of Mount Daluoshan. Seeing that he only had 400 meters left to the finish line, he was overjoyed. But what he didn't know was that 10,000 meters wasn't the end of the mountain trail. There were no officials there either. Instead, a place with a mountain god temple sign ominously awaited him. Alan collapsed instantly upon seeing this. The enormous disparity left him unable, accepting that this is a mountain god temple. Then what was the mountain god temple on the signpost just now? But Alan couldn't wait for an answer, because he had already caught up. Then Alan's live stream went black instantly, and with his elimination, the strange world descended again. The land of the rising sun returned to my side. By this time, I had arrived before the mountain god temple, because I was accompanied by Black General and protected by the Heavenly Father. I wasn't afraid of anything strange inside, so I went straight in. Only after entering did I discover that the mountain god the villagers spoke of was actually a human being. He looked very ordinary. There was nothing special about him, but I found important information on the pillars on both sides. He will lure innocent people into the great falling mountain, and cause them to lose their way. Those lured by him will have the illusion of being watched and followed. They will unconsciously enter the great falling mountain, and proceed along a specific route. In most cases, these people will be lost in the great falling mountain, and become his servant. Very few people can, through sheer willpower, eliminate his unusual influence, and completely overcome the distortion of their own perception. Many years ago, a mysterious human visited Mount Daluo. He possessed the ability to resist cognitive distortion. Under the mysterious person's guidance, the Daluo ancestors finally defeated him, but the mysterious person fell into a deep sleep because of this. To commemorate this mysterious person, the ancestors of Daluoshan respectfully called him the mountain god, and built a mountain god temple, so that he would forever receive offerings. Seeing this, I gradually sorted out my thoughts. It turns out that this mysterious person was the true mountain god. It was only the mountain god's slumber that allowed him to revive. Perhaps only by reawakening the mountain god can we defeat him. But how can we awaken the mountain god? Just as I was at my wit's end, I found another note next to the statue of the mountain god. It seems my reputation as a note-finding expert isn't undeserved. The note roughly stated that because of the lure of injury, Daluo Mountain was developed into a scenic spot. The mountain god temple was relocated to the mountaintop. Because it was too far away, the mountain god temple's incense gradually died out. This allowed its power to gradually recover, thus completely polluting Daluo Mountain. The note also left an important clue, pointing to the Daluo Hotel. Meanwhile, Austin in the US also saw the information on the note. The back and forth frustrated him immensely, but he had no other choice. He decided to return to the Continental Hotel again. But just as Austin turned around, he appeared again. Could returning to the Continental Hotel also be a misleading clue? I've encountered the biggest crisis since I entered the Rule of Strange Tales incident. Facing his appearance, the puppet and the Black General were completely no match. It turns out that just now, the information on the note from the Mountain God Temple once again led the clues to the Continental Hotel. League's Austin, after reading it, was angry, but had no other choice. He could only quickly return, but he appeared. It seems the information about going to the mainland hotel was also wrong. Just as the people of Ryukyu were worried about me, thinking I was also going back to the mainland hotel, I casually threw the note on the ground. To think they tried to lure me to the mainland hotel with just a piece of paper. I'm not that naive. That place doesn't look like a good place at all. What's more, Black General had already tipped me off. Meanwhile, Claude, as expected, successfully scouted for information, and ran into the mountain god temple with a note. He respectfully placed the note at the foot of the mountain god, hoping that the chosen one who receives the intelligence would help him successfully escape from Mount Delugia. Then, a blinding light appeared. The note actually vanished into thin air. Claude's task was thus completed, and he began to receive the protection of the mountain god temple. Then, back to me, returning to my side. As I was leaving the mountain god temple, I was drawn to streaks of golden light that suddenly appeared. I hurried back. I found that another note had appeared out of nowhere at the foot of the mountain god. Just as onlookers in other countries were speculating that I wouldn't believe the note, a powerful scene unfolded. The high-ranking officials of Longwood used their one and only hint. They confirmed the correctness of the note. This infuriated the citizens of Little Japan. They cursed their own government's stupidity. Otherwise, the bridge-hole burlap sack wouldn't have been eliminated so early. Meanwhile, I looked at the note from Claude, and understood roughly what it meant. It turns out the mainland hotel staff are all his servants. Their lives are the source of his power. To get rid of him, we not only need to awaken the mountain god, but also must eliminate those employees. The note suggests, there's a golden garment and incense in the mountain god temple. We can summon the mountain god using these two things. Then I started searching around here. Finally, I found some clothes under a table. After changing, I looked like a little golden man. It really is true that clothes make the man. Just as I was holding the offering box and about to head to the Continental Hotel, the call came again. And this time, it was close, right behind me. It was him. He seemed afraid I would summon the mountain god. So he didn't care anymore. He actually rushed into the mountain god's temple, intending to strike first. I suddenly turned around, and found him enveloped in an evil aura. His frequent calls seemed to form an invisible force. He wants me to submit. Luckily, the jellyfish pendant worked again at this moment. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have a chance to fight back. While I was still conscious, I immediately summoned the mountain god according to the instructions on the note. But the mountain god didn't appear. This only enraged him further. It's better to rely on oneself than others. Since the mountain god won't appear, I will immediately order Black General to attack. Black General has been eager for a fight. In an instant, he spat out countless tentacles to surround him. But he wasn't afraid of Black General at all. With a flick of his wrist and a lift of his foot, he severed all of Black General's tentacles. I broke out in a cold sweat when I saw this. I never expected this monster to be so powerful. I quickly pulled out the doll and threw it. But even with the doll and Black General attacking together, we still couldn't break through his defenses. Seeing the situation worsening, I anxiously pondered. What detail had I overlooked? The mountain god of the Luo Mountain finally appeared. I successfully completed the Luo Mountain level. It was just now. That strange man, to stop me, actually chased me all the way to the mountain god temple. But according to the instructions on Claude's note, I still couldn't summon the mountain god. Faced with his relentless pursuit, I had no other choice. I could only summon the Black General and the puppet to fight together against him. But who knew, even they together were no match for this strange opponent. Black General was even knocked flying by his single punch. I watched this scene with a shocked expression. I never expected this strange creature to be so powerful. I always thought I was playing the part of a protagonist in a satisfying novel. But who would have thought I'd be in this predicament, next to this huge mountain? The strange creature was even more arrogant now. Knowing I had no support, it laughed strangely and pounced on me. But I can't back down either. After all, so many onlookers are watching. Besides, even if I did back down, he wouldn't let me off. So I decided to charge forward and engage in a passionate brawl with him, praying my talent would play a role. But just then, an exciting scene unfolded. Golden chains appeared out of thin air, instantly locking the eerie presence. It turned out to be the mountain god of Daluoshan finally appearing. Then I saw the mountain god and the eerie presence instantly grappling. At that moment, I realized that I hadn't missed any details. It was just that the mountain god's revival needed time, but I couldn't relax at this moment, because the mountain god and the eerie presence were now evenly matched. Following Claude's intel, to completely defeat this strange being, I must deal with the person in the Continental Hotel who's giving it power, so I didn't dare delay for a moment. Taking the puppet and Black General, I quickly ran towards the Continental Hotel. But as soon as I entered the Continental Hotel, these employees seemed to have been collectively summoned by him, and were about to charge out. I remember the note said, the employees in red and white are his main